Hey there, kids. It's time to sit because Battleground Casual is on. Here's Aaron or Matt.
Well, I probably should have pulled us in quicker.
I mean, look, I understand it, like the song is so mesmerizing, the vocals are just so powerful that it took you a minute. You had to regroup because it just brought emotion onto you. So I totally understand why, you had to be off screen for a couple seconds. I had to do the same thing. That was really, really powerful stuff. It's like super emotional.
Yeah, whatever you say.
Really
All right,
emotional.
guys, welcome back to Battleground Casual, the 12th edition of the show, where we discuss movies, not debate them. I, of course, am joined by Mr. Matt Beer, and I'm going to go ahead and pull in our other panelists instead of doing like the normal intro because it's a small show today. We are also joined by the Tato himself, Mr. Jake Reese. Jake, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So before we get into the show, we're going to do some house cleaning bits. First off, if you are here for the spoiler section of Guardians of the Galaxy, we have a couple of the bigger news stories this week that we're going to run through first and discuss probably briefly because it is just the three of us, but we'll go through them before we jump into discussing Guardians of the Galaxy. But do be warned, this is a spoiler discussion for Volume 3. So once we get there, we will be discussing full-on spoilers. Secondly, just a couple of small tidbits. Last week, if you guys tuned in, hello, Jonathan, thanks for being here with us. Last week, if you guys tuned in, you guys saw that Matt, myself, Madi, and Austin sort of went over more in depth on the Writers Guild strike. Now, obviously, that is still ongoing. However, I've made a decision as the person who sort of puts together the content for the show that unless there are any major developments in the actual strike itself, I'm not going to report on it every single week because at that point it just it does start to feel redundant. I did go into it a little bit last week and sort of how it works, and Matt and I were able to sort of talk because we both did research on it. We were just able to sort of talk about it a little bit. But if there's anybody who wants a like very in-depth sort of breakdown of why the writer's strike actually exists, because I know a lot of people still aren't 100% sure as to why this is even a thing. They just see, Stranger Things delayed, not being made actively, and it's like, what the fuck? And they're, they're all sorts of, not that I have to tell you guys to go watch a bigger channel than us, but Dan Merle did a great video on it. It's nearly 45 minutes, like breaking down. He does the thing I said I didn't want to do, which is I didn't want to just stick like pieces of the document up on the screen and sort of verbatim read what it said and break it down because our show we had more to do than just that. He takes the time to fully go into it and explain and investigate not only why it's happening, but why it could have probably been easily avoided on the studio side because the demands were not all that insane, and also why it's probably not going away anytime soon because of what's at stake with this writer strike. So it's good to go check that out. And then also the other part of like not reporting every little detail of it is if anyone is curious as to what productions are being affected or stopped and what productions are moving forward, not often used as a good source, but I've found that the good people at Wikipedia are actually doing a good job at actively updating and keeping track of what is being stopped and started due to the writer's strike. So if you go to the Wikipedia page that's already there about the writer's strike, in addition to any of the information that you may find, there is consistently updated and actively properly sourced information on what is being stopped and started. Again, I think it behooves us to just sit here every week and be like, well, this is halted and this is halted and this got halted. And there's other stuff to talk about as we'll get into this week. So go check that out. The other last bit of house cleaning, of course, is for a tough moment there. It looked like we were going to have to report on a passing of somebody because for those of you who do pay attention to this news, last week, very suddenly, and currently it's not known exactly what the issue is, but Jamie Foxx's health took an extreme turn last week, and he was put into like basically consistent 24/7 watch hospital care. Earlier this week, for lack of a better term, it looked like he may have genuinely been on death's door. Whatever it is that is going on with his health, he did not look good. As of the last 12 hours, a statement was released that he had made some sense of a recovery since, and he was apparently awake and interacting and able to interact with his daughter, and I believe he has grandkids as well at this point. He was able to sort of interact with them, which is awesome and excellent because he's only 53 or 54. I think that is way too young, especially with something so sudden. I mean, Lance Reddick just passed away a few weeks ago from what was essentially just a built-up heart attack that was never discovered. Early 50s is too young. So, from a show that you'll never see, Jamie Foxx, get well soon, sir. Because nobody deserves to go through that type of medical situation at that young an age. With that said, though, as I said, before we jump into Guardians, we are going to discuss some of the news stories from this week. We have 3 big ones we'll talk about before we get into Guardians, and then we'll get into the others after the fact, some smaller ones. And the first one is last night and earlier today as well, the first screenings for the upcoming film Fast X or Fast 10, however you want to pronounce it, or Fast and Furious 10, or The Fast and the Furious 10, or technically Fast and Furious 11, because there's a spin-off film that's also in there, or why the fuck is this franchise still going? Whatever you choose to address it by. Held its first screenings. Its premiere was last night. Critic screenings were this afternoon and this morning, and depending on where you live. And early reactions, as I went through a bunch of them, range from calling it one of the best of the franchise to one of the worst of the franchise. So it's certainly a mix depending on what you're looking for. But here are the consensus points that were sort of reached based on the reviews. And I pulled 5 out that sort of seemed to run through everybody's discussions. The first one is, it seems that the standout performances within the film come from 2 franchise newcomers of Jason Momoa and Alan Ritchson. Of course, Momoa plays the villain Dante Reyes. People describe him, especially compared to Cena in the last film, as a breath of fresh air that this franchise sort of needed. People were comparing him to a Bond villain. He plays it like a super villain. It's very, very exaggerated, but in the best way. Alan Ritchson, who, of course, fans of Amazon's Jack, is it Jack Reacher? Is that
Reacher?
Yeah.
There we go. Jack.
Yep.
I know they got a couple of Jacks. Jack Reacher, of course, if you were a fan of Blue Mountain State back in the day, or the most recent Turtle films, he was Raphael. He is also in this. He plays the new leader of the very aptly named The Agency, a character named Ames, because I guess Kurt Russell was less available than he was for the last one. I don't really know. And apparently he's also very, very good for the role that he has in it. I don't know how big it is necessarily, because it's a big-ass fucking cast, but he is apparently very good for what he does in the film. Of the old returning cast, it seems as though the parts of the film that feature Sung Kang and Jason Statham deliver some of the more fun sections of the film in a way that stands out. And it seems as though John Cena was much more positively received in this film, if not deemed a little still unnecessary to the overall plot of the film. Kind of like in the last one, it's like you don't really need him here, but he's better used than he was in the last one, which is an improvement on any level because he was a kind of shitty antagonist. Sorry. The film's tone is far less serious than Fate of the Furious and F9. It definitely feels like it's more going for the summer blockbuster vibe of Fast Five and Hobbs and Shaw. It's not trying to take itself as seriously, despite what the marketing would tell you. Again, contrasting to the marketing, the family quote-unquote vibe that the franchise has sort of been parodied for over the last few films is also greatly played down in this. Some even compared the style as more of a Western, with the film focusing more on a personal grudge between Dom and Dante that, of course, does extend to the families, but it's a little bit less about the family, if it makes sense. It's really much more down to these two. One of the continuing negatives of this franchise is Charlize Theron's Cypher returns in a small supporting role once again and adds very little to the plot, aside from clearly being kept around for future usage, although what that is, it's not really known. And then the last thing that even the positive reviews noted on is, if you thought Fast 9 was dumb, this movie continues to build on that. Now, some people like that, some people don't, but it does get dumber, which if you're thinking, how do you get dumber than going to space? I guess you're just going to have to find out. In addition to that, because of the early screenings, there were not 1 but 3 different cameos in the film that were leaked. Now, one of them has since been publicly acknowledged by the actor themselves. They posted a screenshot from them in the film on Instagram and been like, yes, I'm in the movie. The other two are still studio-wise being kept a secret. So we'll talk about those in a second. I'm not going to say them in the news breakdown. And then the last thing is Diesel revealed at the premiere that apparently Universal now wants to redirect and make Fast 10 the first part of a concluding trilogy instead of the two-part approach that they were previously discussing, which means we'll now be getting a Fast 11 and Fast 12, which means by the end of this franchise, purportedly, you can look at this as Fast 1, 2, and 4 are sort of their own weird little trilogy where like these are just a bunch of street racers. And then there's Fast 3 where a bunch of totally different characters go to Tokyo. And then there's Fast 5, 6, and 7 where they're like racers that are now hired by an agency. And then there's 8 and 9 and also Hobbs and Shaw, which is like the prelude trilogy to the concluding trilogy of the world's best superheroes in Fast 10, 11, and 12. And if your head's spinning, mine is too. But that's just because I've been sick the last few days. 11 and 12 are tentatively dated for May release dates in 2025 and 2027, but Fast X drops on May 19th, 2023. All right, so Tatel, we'll go down to you first since you're the guest here. Obviously, we've had plenty of discussion before, be it between Battleground matches and other things of the past. And I know that you yourself, before sort of becoming more ingrained in the film community, were very much like a action movies almost only type of guy. Like your enjoyment goes to no, okay,
no, yeah, you're off on that one. I'm not sure. I'm not a huge action cat, but I do dig this franchise.
Okay, well, I'm an asshole then. I'm sorry, I don't pay attention.
That's okay.
Come on, Aaron.
I think maybe that comes from
I'll
a
go
lot
to
of
the back.
MCU. Yeah, get out.
I was about to remove him. So you did it for me.
Good yard, Aaron. Good yard. Maybe that comes from, like I said, the MCU and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of comedy, funny ha-has in my getting into bigger films. Any which way. Sorry, I digress. I have not caught 8 or 9 yet. Because that's how I kind of go in and out of franchises. So I didn't watch after Tokyo Drift. I totally fell off the franchise, and then I watched when 7 came out. I just marathoned them. So dig the franchise. Haven't caught the latest ones yet. I'm kind of obviously lukewarm on them. I will go back to them at some point, but yeah, don't have a ton to say on the topic. But I'm for it. If they, keep making these movies, keep making them dumb. That's what they're there for. I'm for it.
Yeah, sorry, because Kevin Smith is such a great action director. I should have known that. Matt, what are your? Now I feel like an actual asshole. I'm sorry.
You're good, buddy.
Matt, what are your thoughts on the reception overall that the film's receiving? It's very much mixed, but it seems maybe more mixed in a positive way.
Yeah, I will say the one I saw that you didn't read was "This is the worst of the franchise. Name any movie, and it is worse." And stuff. So that was my first
review.
Yeah, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, his was the most negative.
Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah. So this is the worst one. Said the stakes weren't raised, but yeah, I liked this franchise to a certain point. Then we got to 8, and I was like, or 7 actually. I was like, this is okay, but it's understandable because the Paul Walker situation. They had to completely change the movie halfway through filming. Whatever, I'll be like, whatever, it's fine. 8, I was like, yeah, this is just okay. There's a baby fight that I thought was kind of fun, but that was really about it. And then 9 was an abomination to humanity. 9 is something that you show prisoners, and then they will decide to not do bad things anymore. This is the type of tool that we need to reprogram some of these people. It is really just not good. So I have not been looking forward to this movie, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be dumb things in it, of course. You have him like riding down the Hoover Dam or whatever in a car. I'm like, okay, that's kind of fun, whatever. But
I hope it's
overall,
not the Hoover Dam. I hope it's just a random dam.
Yeah, but no, this is kind of what I expected. Yeah, right. Yeah. Now this is what I expected, though. Where they're like, yeah, it's dumb. Some people are like, it's fun though. We had a good time. Jason Statham getting the reception that he has gotten, or Jason Momoa getting the positive reception that he's been getting, even from the most negative review. The guy's like, but I'll tell you what, Jason Momoa is great in this movie, and worth seeing alone. That made me go, okay.
I was gonna say, like, as somebody who read through a lot of different reviews from a lot of different sites, Jermaine Lucier, who, to be fair, is probably one of the most accredited critics out there. Like, for those of you who were Schmodown fans, he runs within the same circles as all those people, Campia, Bibiani, like Whitney Seibold, like that camp. He runs within that. I'm just naming critics, but like he runs within that sort of top circle of like trusted movie critics. He just never actually played in the Schmodown.
Right.
He is someone to be trusted, and you're right. Of all the reviews I read, his was very easily the most negative, and even he still ended it with, it may still be worth seeing. So,
and that's really why I'm seeing the movie. Well,
Momoa.
There's 3 reasons why I'm seeing the movie. Jason Momoa, because Momoa's he, just judging by the trailers, like, Momoa is he's like the perfect Fast and Furious villain. And he feels like he's going to be kind of what I thought Jason Statham would be with Fast 7, where he would get to that level of like, okay, this dude's really, really good. But there's 2 other people that I'm really, really excited to see in this movie. One is Brie Larson. I don't need to explain why, but Brie Larson is definitely one that I just... Oh, Brie Larson. Lovely. Lovely woman.
Okay. Next.
And then the other girl, it's Danielle. I don't remember her last name, but she was Ratcatcher 2.
She was
the
like
outfit
her.
that she wore at the premiere for the movie in Rome made me go, okay, this is worth 3 tickets.
For fuck's sake, Maddie.
Her name is Daniela Melchior.
Yes, her. That's worth the ticket.
Worth the price.
She better, if she's on screen for 20 to 30 minutes, this will get a positive review from me.
I'm like 90% certain she's one of the people that's in that like Rio racing scene that they keep seeing in the trailers, because like especially when they do that shot that's like horizontal through the windows, it's like there's one person, like it's like, okay, it looks like Momoa's in one of them, Diesel's in one, I think Brie Larson's in one, but one of those cars has a woman in it who I don't recognize, and I'm like 90% sure that's her. Because if you look up the character list, her description is like a racer from Dom's past. And it's like, fucking hell. Dom has a past with everyone.
Yes.
Dude, like seriously, my favorite thing about these films is just reading the different variances of like who's from Dom's past. You know what I mean? Like he's got a past with fucking Statham's mom.
Dude did lots of crimes before fucking Spillner showed up.
Yeah.
He's got a past with Michael Rooker. Like, man's got a past with everybody in these movies.
It's true.
Okay, so I think kind of all these movies are just okay. Like, the 9th one was definitely the worst. Like, I'll give you that. But I didn't hate it nearly as much as you did.
It's god-awful.
The first one is great.
I don't think there's anything in these to, like, I mean, even the earlier ones to me, like, these are all just kind of okay. Like, I think all of these movies range somewhere from like a 4 to like a 7, 8 at most. Like they're not top tier, they're not bottom tier. I think I genuinely think you could binge all these start to finish and have like a decent marathon and not really feel one way or the other about them. They're all just kind of popcorn flair. That said, I did think the 9th one was a gross step back in terms of the action part of the franchise. It took itself way too seriously. It was way too convoluted. Cena was not a good villain. No. And the fact that you have Charlize Theron just kind of weirdly hanging out in a cage for half the film doesn't help. Yeah. But like, out of context, that sounds so weird. But in the film, it makes just as little sense.
I was going to say, Aaron.
Yeah, it's really weird. But like, she doesn't. The fact that everything I read on her in this movie is just, she's here again. is like, fuck, really? Like, okay.
Yeah. Luke Evans will probably appear in a couple of them,
honestly,
like he did in the
he's been
last one.
Like, aside from Idris and Hobbs and Shaw, he's honestly probably been my favorite villain out of all of them. I thought he did a good job.
Him and I think Statham also. I liked him as a villain.
I feel like Statham never fully embodied a villain because he was a villain in the 7th film by way of wanting revenge for his brother, and then the next time you see him, he's like part of the good guys now.
Yeah, that's like one of my issues. I wish they would have kept him just the villain. But look, I mean, when your mom's Helen Mirren, I don't blame you for putting your beef aside.
My hope is that we can just see those 4 on screen together because we've now introduced Helen Mirren, Jason Statham, Luke Evans, and Vanessa Kirby as this weird British villain/spy family. Like everybody's a criminal, but they're also like an affiliated spy. And they've like 3 of them have appeared on screen together at various separate moments, but all 4 have yet to appear together. And that's what I want before this is all over. Because let's be real, they're the family we all care about. For what it's worth, though, and I'm not saying anything that's not in the trailers, so if you haven't seen the trailers, I apologize. The fact that like specifically Jermaine Lucier was like, yeah, the stakes aren't elevated here, considering it seems like a large chunk of the plot is both A, based on a previous film, and then B, involves his son getting kidnapped for the 2nd time in this franchise. I'm not shocked, especially because the most recent trailer, and again, sorry if you don't watch trailers, but it's part of the marketing for the film, so I'm going to say it, not only shows the scenes where Momoa's kidnapped him, but then also shows a scene with him riding with Cena, which clearly shows he gets rescued by Cena.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Then make this the 2nd time in the franchise that Dom's kid gets kidnapped and a side character is the one that saves him. For what it's worth, Jake, if you're gonna watch anything in this franchise, the 8th film, it's like the C plot of the third act action sequence, but it's like in addition to like Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel like surfing nukes or whatever on the Antarctic or whatever the hell's happening down there. Jason Statham and Luke Evans team up to go on a super spy mission to rescue his kid, and it's just them fighting through an aircraft like Call of Duty style. And honestly, it's the most entertaining thing in the film because the 2 of them have chemistry.
It's just funny. It's just funny that this is going to be the 2nd movie in the franchise where the villain from the previous movie saves his kid. Because in 7, Statham's the villain, saves his kid in 8. 9, Cena's the villain, saves his kid.
Amazing. It's like that is fantastic. It really is.
So I was gonna say, if you want to tune out for the next like minute and a half, because we won't spend too long on this, I'll throw out the spoiler of who the cameos are. Do you guys care about this?
I don't.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the 3 actors who have been spoiled to have cameos in the film, at this point, I'm going to call it Hollywood's franchise whore, Pete Davidson, purportedly has a cameo in this movie. The more sentimental one is Paul Walker's daughter, Meadow Walker, apparently has an on-screen cameo in this movie. I don't know if she's connected to his character because it would not make sense for his character to have a fully grown daughter based on the timeline that they've set up. But she's in the movie, which is cool. And then apparently one of the post-credit scenes confirms that Dwayne Johnson has come crawling back on all 4s to return to 11 and 12 after previously very publicly saying that he had no interest in doing so, and then subsequently very publicly falling out with DC.
I'll say his Black Adam failed so bad at the box office that he decided to come back to Fast and
Furious. And I mean, we're all waiting on that Red Notice sequel, right?
Oh yeah. He's got the Santa Claus movie that he's doing with
Chris Evans. I mean, that could be good because of Chris Evans.
It could, but you got J.K. Simmons as Santa. That could be cool. Like buffed out.
Why was my instinct to say again? Has that happened already?
I don't think so.
Oh, close.
I mean, there's Violent Night, but I don't remember.
No, the animated film. Claus. J.K. Simmons voiced Santa Claus. This has already happened.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go.
That
I
is
was like, I've
true.
heard this before. J.K. Simmons does Santa. I feel like I've heard this sentence. But
That's
yeah,
funny.
honestly, like in terms of those cameos, Paul Walker's daughter being brought in, that's cool. Even if it's just for a scene, I think that that's like a really sweet thing. I mean, if you're gonna make this all
Mhm.
about family, like bring her in, that's cool.
Yeah.
Just the same as how, like, look, I don't support them like using his brothers to resurrect Paul Walker from the dead, but if they want to give him cameos or characters, that's fine too. Whatever. I don't know. Maybe Brian's got a fucking younger brother no one ever talks about. Like,
Right.
at this rate, I mean, look, they took 9 movies to introduce that Vin Diesel has a brother. It took 9 films to bring that fact up. Like, my
Right.
favorite thing was my brother turns to me in the theater and he just goes, I want to double check. This is the 9th one, right? And I was like, yes, it's the 9th one. And he goes,
Yeah.
so their grudge, because they had say a line in the movie where it's like they had a falling out and Diesel's like, I vowed never to speak to or of him again or something like that. And my brother's like, that vow was that strong that he's gone a good 30 years without ever bringing this guy up to anyone.
Yeah, hey man, like, sometimes you make vows they last for a minute.
But yeah, so yeah, in terms of the cameos, Johnson, man, I think I've made it clear on this show that I'm kind of old Dwayne Johnson now. I don't fucking care anymore about this guy. He can do whatever.
Right.
You want to crawl back to the franchise you publicly burned, go ahead. If they're going to let you in the door, that's their problem.
Yeah.
I think that man's got an ego too big to stuff his own head at this point. So
He's a big head too.
it's a big head too.
He's a
So
large
whatever.
head physically.
I still think you can be entertaining in films. This is not like some public barrage against you. I just, as a producer, as a person, I don't like your attitude anymore. So whatever.
Let's go live action Maui.
Pete Davidson. I mean, I like Pete Davidson. I think he's harmless. He had a cameo in Guardians 3, and like there was a small sect of the internet that were like, "Why is Pete Davidson in Guardians 3?" And it's like you couldn't even tell. You would never know if they didn't say who he played.
Yeah.
Right.
So who cares? All right, so we'll jump into the second news story here, which is a few weeks ago at CinemaCon, it was revealed that the long-rumored Beetlejuice 2 is finally happening, with Tim Burton returning to direct and Michael Keaton returning to star. Well, over the past week, we've learned more details on the film. Most importantly, for all you Burton fans, Danny Elfman is on board to compose the film. With that said,
That's all we
in
needed.
terms of the other
This
details,
movie's a banger.
Burton reteams with his Wednesday creative team as writers and showrunners for that show, as well as famously Smallville. Alfred Goh and Miles Millar are writing the screenplay for the film, which is based on a story that was pitched to Burton by Seth Grahame-Smith, the writer of the Lego Batman movie. And Jenna Ortega also joins the cast as Lydia Dietz's daughter. In addition to Keaton, Winona Ryder and Catherine O'Hara both return as Lydia and Delia Dietz, though it has been confirmed that the other 3 remaining stars from the original film, Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis, and Jeffrey Jones, are not returning for sure.
I wonder why Jeffrey Jones isn't hey.
I wonder why Alec
Because Tim
Baldwin's not
Burton
in
has
this
better
movie.
standards than Deadwood.
Fucking yikes.
In their place, though, the film has already added some new cast members. Former Matrix and Bond girl Monica Bellucci is added as Beetlejuice's wife. Willem Dafoe joins the cast as an enforcer of the afterlife. And Justin Theroux is cast in an unknown role. The film is set to release on September 6th, 2024. Production is currently taking place in London as the script was fully completed and submitted before the WGA strike, and production is working in accordance with the strike guidelines, with Burton making sure they set to it. So the movie is on track for that September release date. It'd be other extraneous issues that delay its continuation. And of course, because of the writer's strike at this point, the script is locked in. Whatever they've written is written, and Goh and Millar are out from that point. So I'm just going to start with this one because Beetlejuice is one of those big pop culture things that I've never seen. It's one of the few. I've seen small sections of the film because it was playing at a movie theater that I worked at one point, and I would walk in just to watch scenes because I'd never seen it. And it certainly looks intriguing, and I think Burton pre-2000 was a consistently good director, so I'm sure it's an excellent movie that I've just missed so far. I look forward to seeing it at some point before I go to see the sequel. With that said, I'm going to try this again. Jake, Are you a fan of Beetlejuice?
Alrighty, yeah, that's a film I've seen. You can
Very good.
Keaton's having a blast in it, which is great. It's always fun when Michael Keaton's having fun. I think we all agree on that one in general. It's one of those. It's a Tim Burton movie. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it.
It's a Tim Burton
I am a little bummed that it's not Kevin Smith writing Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian, as was in the works in the early 2000s. That was a thing. It was when Kevin was doing Superman Lives, when Tim Burton was doing Superman Lives in that age.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was part of that.
That brought you that film. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So that was another possibility for the sequel to Beetlejuice at one point. But this sounds fun. Jenna Ortega is an actress I love. I have seen all of her movies. A wink. I did actually get around to Scream, and I do actually thoroughly enjoy her performance in Scream. So I've yet
I'm
to
glad
see
you
Wednesday.
finally saw one of those movies.
Did you watch The Fallout though? Did you watch The Fallout?
Nah.
There's a couple scenes I think you'd like in that.
I watched probably those couple scenes.
You
They're
probably
in high
did.
school, dude. They're in high school.
They're 20-something years old.
Oh, holy bejesus.
They're 20-some-year-old high school students.
Hey, that's a classic.
High school a few times.
I love me, John. Varsity Blues. I gotta think of his name.
Oh, that's
Justin
Vanderbeek.
Oh.
James Vanderbeek in high school at age 30.
Look, we all love Fast Times at Richmond High. Okay, they're like in their 20s.
What? Where Sean Penn is looking like Matthew McConaughey and Dazed and
Sean Penn's
Confused.
great in that movie. Like, I love Sean Penn in that movie. He's so good. He's so good.
Spicoli, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's so
Jeff
good.
Spicoli, great. One of the great movie stoners of all time, I gotta say.
Great. One of the best, like, 80s characters of all
Oh,
time.
so, yeah, just very much
Besides Marty McFly.
My God, I don't have words.
So all right, so I'll adjust the conversation here, Matt. I'll throw it to you. Talk to me about. We can go one of two things. Talk to me about the new cast members: Monica Bellucci, Defoe, Justin Theroux, or we could talk about all the reasons why Alec Baldwin and Jeffrey Jones aren't coming back.
Yeah, I wonder why they're not in this movie. Alec Baldwin, what did you do?
Gina Davis, does she even act anymore?
I don't know. Alec Baldwin, I am so sad. I will say, Aaron, I will say, watch the first Beetlejuice movie. Is it a phenomenal movie? No, I don't think it's phenomenal, but it's a really good 80s movie.
Yeah.
I think you would enjoy it thoroughly. But I like the cast members involved. Willem Dafoe is pretty much in every movie like this. It's in Beetlejuice. You'll see him in John Wick. You'll see him in Marvel. You'll see him in anything that's a big property. And I don't blame him for going after him. He's a great actor. I love Willem Dafoe. And I will always be happy to see Willem Dafoe. Even in terrible movies, he's great in those movies. I love him.
Justin Theroux makes a ton of sense here, I will say.
Yeah, he makes a lot of sense. I like him. I overall like just about everybody they involved. I have no issues with them all. I am very happy Jenna Ortega is in this movie, though. That makes me want to go see this movie a few times. Now is she gonna be? She'll probably be like a high school student in this movie because she's still. I mean, in Hollywood standards, she could probably play a high school student for another 10 years.
What's the timeline of it? So was Winona Ryder playing a teenager in the original?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, that could make a little more sense. Because I was gonna say it's been like fucking 30 years nearly.
Yeah, it will probably take place like 30, 40 years later from the first. Probably 30 years later is what they'll go with.
Okay. Now you two have seen it, so you can correct me. I've been told that or at least part of the general premise of Beetlejuice is that he wants to marry Winona Ryder's character, right?
I don't remember, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Does that sound correct in any way? Or he's like interested in her in some way?
It sounds familiar. There's somebody,
I think there's like
it's just been forever since I've seen the movie.
Yeah, he is attempting to marry her, but it's like a death visa issue, I think, or some shit like that.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, politics.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at here is there a world
It's a really cool.
in which they could
box.
try and get away with a
It's a really
Keaton-Ortega
cool.
romance. Because I feel like Matt might enjoy that too much.
But what romance are we talking about?
Keaton Ortega.
The Keaton-Ortega romance.
That would be a little weird.
What?
You're talking about
what is it, 50 years?
You're talking about, 50
She might be his granddaughter.
But to be fair, a character that's dead wanting to be in a relationship with anybody that's alive is a little wild. But yeah, Beetlejuice, it's a really nice thing. The Broadway show is great too. I hope they get the guy that plays Beetlejuice in the Broadway show. Give him a cameo in this movie.
Just to be in it to some extent.
Yeah, just like a little.
I imagine there's no reason not to.
Just like a little.
So
hey
for
guys,
what it's worth, I went on a little research binge. So Gina Davis does still act. I was able to find that she does still act. Apparently, at some point in the near future, she'll be in a film called Pussy Island, which is a thriller that's 2.5 hours.
Is Jenna Ortega in this movie?
No, she's not.
And Brie Larson.
I was gonna go there.
Danielle.
Daniela Melchior.
Yeah, Danielle. Some. Who's all in that?
No, but Christian Slater is. So.
Christian Slater.
It's okay. Well, more about Pussy. Why is there? Yeah. So it's Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut.
That makes perfect sense.
It's a thriller that's 2.5 hours, and its cast is Naomi Ackie, Channing Tatum, Simon Rex, Christian Slater, Gina Davis, Haley Joel Osment, and Kyle MacLachlan.
And her dad is the president of Pussy Island, so I get it.
Her dad, I wouldn't be shocked if he popped up in it. I would not be shocked. It's like, hey, Dad, you want to be in this movie? Let's go something completely opposite of what you would normally do in your real life.
The premise is a cocktail waitress, Naomi Ackie, becomes infatuated with tech mogul Slater King, played by Channing Tatum, and travels with him to his private island where things go horribly wrong.
So it's Jeffrey Epstein.
Channing Tatum plays Jeffrey
Epstein. No, I think it sounded like most of the cast was above 18.
Huh?
Yeah, so without the kids, it's basically Jeffrey Epstein and his island.
Yeah, no, it's just Fuck Island, which is okay. Fuck Island's awesome as long as it's not kids.
No, boys, it's Pussy Island, remember.
Where is that located, I wonder?
Nowhere related.
Las Vegas. That's where.
Okay, so I was going to say, back to Beetlejuice 2 so we can move on.
Yeah, let's get back to that instead of Pussy Island.
I was gonna say,
speaking of Pussy Island, Jenna Ortega, I'm very excited.
Jesus, dude. Okay. I know she's over 18, but
she's like 3 years younger than me. She's like 25 or 24.
No, she's not.
Let's see. She's in her 20s.
She's like 3 years younger than me.
I'm going to say 23.
20 old. 8 years. That's not bad. Robert De Niro is a father at 79. Congrats, Robbie.
I'm the older one of the two. That's closer to your age. Okay. Anyways, in terms of this film, again, having not seen the original, I can't comment. I do have to say though, with these legacy sequels, I do think. I mean, again, obviously, Alec Baldwin and Jeffrey Jones aren't here for a reason, but I do think it's always kind of a safe bet to bring some of the old, but not all of it, because I do think you have to evolve and sort of come up with something new. So I like that they're keeping the clear elements of the original while not fully going with just a story from the original, essentially.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be shocked if there's other bit players in the film that end up coming back in some way going forward. I didn't look at who else is in the cast, but I'm sure there's.
It's pretty small. It's not like a big, huge.
Not a huge, yeah, but maybe if there's a bit player or something that returns, I wouldn't be shocked. In terms of who was added, the idea, just based on the look of him, the idea that someone like Beetlejuice gets a wife like Monica Bellucci, that's funny. I can work with that. Willem Dafoe, as Matt said, is excellent in everything, whether it's the smallest of indies to the weirdest of concepts to the biggest of blockbusters. He gives 110% every time, so he's never a bad thing to add to your film. And you're right, Justin Theroux kind of fits this perfectly. This is the exact type of weird little thing that he would shuffle himself into. So good to have him here. Although for what it's worth, I still say to this day that the Justin Theroux project I love the most is Tropic Thunder, not because he's in it, because he wrote it.
Yeah.
That's the one that I'll be like, that's his like career pinnacle, but still a good actor, still gonna fit here.
Shout out your highness.
We'll go to the third and final story before we get into Guardians, which is the Superman casting. So a lot of rumors have been circling in the last week, circling in the last week over who all is involved with this Superman film. Now, it's worth noting that the list that I have is consorted from different sites that both Matt and I have consorted, different sources, different people, everywhere from unnamed sources to major named reporters that are getting on this. The Hollywood Reporter, Justin Kroll from Variety, lots of different trades are getting involved in this. So there's a lot of different things. Nothing is sure yet. It's kind of like Fantastic Four in that way. There's a lot of names that are in the ether, but nothing's really sure yet.
Yeah.
So right now there are 6 names that are sort of up in the air for Superman. The one that is being sort of named the most is a guy named David Cornsweet, whose biggest role to date was in the film Pearl. He was the projectionist in that film, for anyone who's seen that. But that's his biggest role to date. Other names in that include Harris Dickinson from Triangle of Sadness, Jacob Elordi from Euphoria, Andrew Richardson, who, if you've seen anything he's in, good for you. But to me, he kind of just looks like a discount Andrew Garfield with no work to his name. Not that that's a bad thing, I should say. British actors are usually pretty good. Tom Brittney, who was in the Tom Hanks film Greyhound, and Nicholas Hoult, although I'm going to guess it's more than likely he's not playing Superman. There's a reason why. We'll get to that in a minute. The choices for Lois Lane, it's basically been limited down to 4. This is pretty consistent across the board. Emma Mackey of Sex Education and the upcoming Barbie film, Rachel Brosnahan from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Phoebe Dynevor from Bridgerton, and Matt, what was the name of that film again that's coming up?
Fair Play.
Fair Play, which will premiered at Sundance and will go to Netflix in November, I think you said?
Yes, I think it's middle of November.
And then the last option, it seems, is Samara Weaving from a couple major horror films over the last few years, namely Ready or Not and her little cameo in Scream 6.
She's
so
also
those are
face the music.
Yep, oh God, true. She was in that, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was.
Hey, I'm useful.
She was the daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. And then she's also going to be in Barbie as well.
Is she also playing a Barbie in Barbie?
I believe so. No, wait, it might actually be Emma Mackey.
I know Emma Mackey.
I'll double check, but she's in the Babysitter movies too on Netflix.
Oh yeah, man. Anyways, and then the Lex Luthor choices. So right now, there's only one name that's being named for Lex Luthor consistently. That is Nicholas Hoult, who is considered Gunn's top choice. Reportedly, Gunn has apparently spoken to 2 of his previous Guardians cast members for the role as well. I've seen other very distant, vague, unnamed sources potentially throw names out there, but these are far less official than the trades. The 2 names that I've seen are apparently Dave Bautista, which would be a very different type of Lex Luthor, or Chukwudi Iwuji, who was in the 3rd film as the High Evolutionary. And then apparently, of all the major roles, and by that I mean basically these 3, it seems as though, for lack of a better way of putting it, Superman and Lois Lane are going to be white. But Lex Luthor is the one where if they're going to race bend someone for a minority actor, they're just letting everyone kind of audition for Lex Luthor. There's no sort of, outside of a bald head, see Tato for an example, there's no sort of image or look or guideline for the character. It seems like they're very open to interpretation with this, which I do appreciate.
I am available, just throwing that out there.
Absolutely. We'll get your tape after this episode. We'll send your tape. Yeah. I'm sure we can just tweet it at him. It's not that hard. He checks Twitter.
He
does check Twitter.
He does.
So of these names, it seems as though Nicholas Hoult is the one that's most secure in the casting as of now. He is apparently Gunn's top choice personally, and he is also Warner Brothers' top choice. Warner Brothers have been trying to work with Nicholas Hoult again for years. Apparently, they were big fans of him in the X-Men films, which was his big sort of comeback as an adult. He was with them for Mad Max Fury Road. He was a part of that cast. George Miller had nothing but great things to say about him from that. And since then, Warner have been trying to get him into a project. He was apparently their finalist for the Batman role in Matt Reeves' The Batman. However, it did end up going to Robert Pattinson. And of course, he just worked with Chris McKay on Renfield, who had previously worked with DC on the Lego Batman movie, and he did pre-production for a Nightwing film that never got made. And he's had nothing but good things to say about his experiences at DC, which would push Holt in a positive direction.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so for me, I think Nicholas Hoult would be a good choice. Very good actor. Doesn't hurt to get talent in your movies. Kind of the one name I was really thinking, and I before this stuff came out, I knew this was going to be kind of a far stretch. Jeremy Strong was a guy I thought would be really good as Lex Luthor.
That's a good pull. I like that.
I think he would be great. Just seeing him in Succession alone, like he's fantastic in that, and it feels like he would fit the Lex Luthor type. I think he'd be great if they wanted to go with an older Lex Luthor. Bryan Cranston is a name that's always popular. That's who I would go with as well. He's a great actor.
Heisen
Luther. It'd be great to see him play a villain again, like in a more dramatic type of thing, because he's done some smaller stuff, appears in some things, but he hasn't really had that big role. And I think Lex Luthor would be great for him. He's not going to be Lex Luthor, but I think he'd be great. But Nicholas Hoult, if that's who they go with, I'd be all for that. Nicholas Hoult, I think, would be able to pull that off pretty easily and do a good job. But yeah, I'd be curious if anybody else comes out of nowhere for Lex Luthor. Yeah, and I mentioned it to you earlier too. I guess I'll get into all of them. I don't know if you were like, hey Matt, let's get into it, but I'll just throw it out there. I was talking to you before the show with the Lois Lane. I don't think it's good.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, yeah, my bad. Yeah. I thought you were just picking up the ball. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, jump in.
It sounds like Rachel Brosnahan is the front runner, based off of her audition. That's like, but I'm basing that off of only seeing something about her audition being fantastic. Maybe the other actors are great too.
To reference image for people watching, Brosnahan was, or I guess still is technically because it's not finished yet, Mrs. Maisel and the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon, just to give you a face to the name. So apparently the report is that she's looked at as the favorite because her audition hit Gunn the best, but it's still down to those four, so anyone, depending on, could take kind of the lead. Because of course, as we know, when it comes to these things, it's not just about who's the favorite, it's also about who's willing to play ball with the studio terms, right? I mean, famously, we all remember that Marvel's pick, Scott Derrickson's pick, like everyone's pick for Doctor Strange was Joaquin Phoenix, and Phoenix did not want to play ball with negotiations. It was his way or the highway, and Marvel said, we'll take Benedict Cumberbatch instead.
Yes.
Which is an next job, but...
Yeah. And Jonathan mentioned comments to Bradley Cooper's Lex Luthor, because I know that's a name that kind of went out too. I think he'd be good Lex Luthor. I mean, he's been nominated for multiple Oscars.
I just want to see him in more films. He's acted so infrequently over the last few years that I just want to see him. I know he's got, I believe it's called Maestro. It's his next directorial feature where he's playing Leonard Bernstein, comes out this year. And I am looking forward to that.
Me too. But that'd be a good choice. But I mean, like I said, Rachel Brosnahan seems to be the front runner right now. Maybe not.
So I'll jest to you then as well, because you said before the show your like head-on pick is Phoebe Dynevor, and it's based off something that most of us have not seen yet. So if you can, to some extent, talk about why you're sold.
Yeah. So I never watched Bridgerton. It's just a show that never really
stuck my parents watch it.
Like my parents didn't watch it. My mom, I don't think she's even heard of it.
Lucky.
But I might have to watch it because
So much
John J.
sex.
Sean is in it as well, and I liked him
So
in
much fucking.
Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, apparently, and that's another reason. But she's my top choice because there's a movie that comes out in November. That also has some fucking going. No, there's a
Nice.
movie coming out in November. I saw it at Sundance, the virtual thing. It's called Fair Play.
We flew Matt out to Sundance. It
Yeah,
was great.
I was flown out to Utah to go to Sundance, and I
Is that
might
where
actually
Sundance
go.
is?
I believe so. I believe it's at a
Utah?
Native American reservation in Salt Lake City.
Oh no shit. Okay.
I believe so. I might go next year, actually in person, but because I'm not gonna go on vacation more than likely. But anyway, I mentioned on Twitter and other places that had her name listed as potential Lois Lane because everybody's like, oh, Emma Mackey, who I think would be really good as Lois Lane too, and Rachel Brosnahan, who is a really good actress, and I think she'd be really good as Lois Lane as well. But I was like, no, it should be Phoebe Dynevor. Of course, 10 girls, they like that. And yeah, I was like, look, guys, she's the best actress of the four. And they're like, oh, no way. When you see Fair Play, you guys will believe and agree with me that Phoebe Dynevor is truly, out of the four, the best actress. And I don't even think it's close. I'm just going to say right now, she will be nominated for an Oscar. And I don't see anybody else right now beating her out. Of course, we got to wait and see what comes out in November. Could be somebody we've never heard of. That isn't a great movie. But right now, I think she's going to win the Oscar. She's definitely getting nominated. Her and Alden Ehrenreich are both going to get nominated for that movie. But when you see that movie, you will see Lois Lane. I did see shades of Lois Lane in her too. So watch Fair Play. Okay. You'll agree with me. Best actress, and you'll agree that she will pull off the role better than everybody else. And I think it'd be pretty cool if they announce her as Lois Lane, and then later on that movie comes out and she just blows up even more. And then DC can say, hey, we got an Oscar-nominated actress playing Lois Lane.
Jake, what are your thoughts on the castings? Obviously, a lot of these actors are a little more unknown, so.
Yeah, a couple of them. On the potential Guardian playing Lex Luthor, I'd probably be more towards Batista, but I also wouldn't mind Cooper in the role. That'd be cool too. But I think Batista's a really solid actor. He has some work here in Guardians 3 that does not lend himself to the character of Lex Luthor in any fashion, but lends himself to the acting caliber of it, I think. And yeah, if y'all feel what I'm saying. So that would be cool. Yeah, with the fair play to fair play, that sounds awesome. Hopefully it does well, and that would be cool. I will echo your sentiment on how cool it would be if that woman just blew up as Lois and in this movie. And then Superman himself. You said Nick Holt up for Lex as well. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, he's up. Now he's in the running for both Superman and Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I definitely don't see him as Superman. I definitely see him as more of a beast, side nerdy kind of, and in the maybe I'm reading too much into the menu. And the dude's a good actor, so he could play Superman and totally prove me wrong on this one. But looking at the menu, I just don't see Superman in that guy.
That's fair.
Maybe Lex. And if WB really just wants him in the movie, I would definitely prefer him on that side of the coin.
I feel like it's been a few years since he's played that character, but I feel like if you go back to some of his earlier performances, the earlier sort of versions of the Hank character in the X-Men films, or even Warm Bodies, which he was in, I feel like he does have that softer kind of leading man side to him. It's just more recently, right, between, obviously Fury Road's 8 years ago now, but between Fury Road, the later portrayals of the Hank character where they sort of took it to a darker place emotionally. You look at even Renfield itself, which was a darker project, the menu, certainly it's been more in that darker element, but I think he could do it, but you're right, it's kind of the least expected. Yeah, it seems as though, and Jonathan put it there in the chat as well, like David Cornsweat seems to have a lot of support behind him. I personally have not seen anything that he's in. Pearl is the biggest project he's been a part of, and I know a lot of people were fans of that, but I myself have not seen it. Of all the names that have been listed, the one that interests me the most is Harris Dickinson. For a couple of years, I just called him the guy that got recast and everything. Because or the guy who was the recast and everything, because he was the prince in the second Maleficent film after recasting the actor from the first. Then he filled the Taron Egerton role in The King's Men, the same kind of youth entrant that Taron Egerton played because it was a prequel, so Taron Egerton couldn't come back. He sort of did that for a few years, but Triangle of Sadness, which I didn't love overall, but I thought he was excellent in it. And I think that character carries just enough innocence within him.
Either main cat
actions. What'd you say?
Either the main character in Triangle.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think specifically the way the character is written and the way he performs it, I think there's enough like innocence in the character that I think he could pull it off. Because I mean, as Gunn has previously, to a lot of people's chagrin, said like he wants Superman to be kind of human but alien, and more importantly, he wants Superman to be someone you could like trust enough to get a hug from, which I think that's wording that he used just to piss people off on purpose because he does seem to get a kick out of that. But yeah. I get what he's saying when he says that. And I think Harris Dickinson could pull that off. I think Triangle of Sadness showed the range that he has as an actor more than... And he was good in The Kingsman. He was probably one of the strongest parts of that film. But Triangle of Sadness, I think, does a lot more for him as an actor. It shows what he can do. All right.
I'm just waiting on I'm waiting on a sequel to The King's Man or Men. I can't remember. I want a sequel to that, but
Men,
I want to see how they build up to good old Adolf. You know, they're clearly building to Adolf as the villain.
The King's Man's.
That's what I'm waiting for. A good old Adolf. Wonder if he'll be in art school. I'm trying to get to art school.
I'm sorry, but the box office didn't support your interest in seeing Adolf get killed.
I don't know. I think they'd be willing to see it. See him fail.
When was the last time that, I mean, it happened in Bastards. Have we killed Adolf? I mean, we killed him in JoJo. We kicked him out a window. Yeah, we kicked him out a window in JoJo. That was cool.
Glorious Bastards.
Yeah.
JoJo has to be.
I think JoJo was the last time we really did it.
Wasn't there? What was that like arcade like short film? Kung Fury. It was Hitler.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I think it was Kung Fury. I think that's the one. Yeah, but I think it'd be cool to see the end game of the Kingsman movies. Taron Egerton travels back in time with Colin.
Oh, so you just want the third Kingsman film to be Taron Egerton travels back in time with the other characters to kill him.
Yeah, we can get Mark Strong back.
Get Mark Strong. They pick up Mark Strong, Sam Jackson, Sophia Patella, all of them.
And they do like the reverse snap with him. He comes back from the mine.
Yeah, you got to get as many people as you can to fight Adolf and his army.
Destroy one of the only good scenes in that second film.
You're not wrong.
We need it. Get the one girl that he bangs at the end of the first movie. Get her in there.
Hey, she's a princess. Respect her.
Yeah, get the princess in there.
Respect her the way he respected her, okay?
Get everybody that was involved in the Kingsmen.
What, like the back of a Volkswagen?
Whole thing, and go back in time and fight that army.
Listen, she thought the world was ending, okay?
Stop some camps from being made.
So
I think that's what it would take place in, is at that time. So it makes sense. Adolf goes back in the past, brings in a bunch of other historical villains too.
Bill and Ted meets.
Bring the Vikings in it.
Get that out of your system.
I like Travis Fimmel.
Bring the Vikings.
Get that out of your system. We good?
I just want to see that now. I think it'd be terrible.
Or did you mean like Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, we can bring Kirk Cousins in there too. Kirk Cousins for some reason fights there.
What is he just?
Aaron Rodgers' parents
across the screen.
Yeah.
I don't know very much about the NFL, but I know Kirk Cousins gritties for some reason because that's apparently a big enough thing.
Yeah,
but you got to get him when he's wearing the chain on the bus.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's why people
got to get shirtless Kirk Cousins with the chain. Have him travel back to help fight too.
With the chain. Oh no.
Yeah, he has a whole chain on. It's wonderful. It's gangster Kirk.
Justin Fields, the best quarterback in the division. Feels good. Anyway, sorry.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 dropped in theaters last weekend. As we'll go ahead and move on. Normally in these summary write-ups, I would put the plot, but technically the plot's a spoiler because the trailers didn't really give you a plot, so I'm not going to spoil it yet. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 reunites all your favorite Guardians, even the ones you thought that were dead, back for one final heartfelt adventure while introducing some new allies as well as 2 new adversaries in Chukuri Iwuji as the High Evolutionary and Will Poulter as Adam Warlock. The film is also a hodgepodge of cameos, heartbreak, humor, and a million other things across the board. The movie, continuing, honestly, its production has also been sort of oh my god! I just clicked back over and realized. God damn it, Matt! Okay. That's
Kirk
him?
Cousins. That's Kirk Cousins with the chain.
Look at the glasses.
Hey, that's a powerful force right there that the Kingsmen could use.
Jake, I think he stole your glasses.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, clicking away from that. Man, you can tell the dude next to him is laughing at him and not with him.
Oh, very much so. I mean, they are having a good time. They're celebrating a victory on the team playing home. Is what they're doing right there. So
that's fair. All right, so let's so Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, kind of like its production, a bit of a mixed reception all around. To be fair, the movie seems to have been the most positively received MCU film in over a year. It seems like fans are collectively getting behind this. Critics were slightly a little more mixed. It had an 82% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes with a 7.2 out of 10, with basically some critics showing criticism against a bit of the unevenness of the movie, but overall giving it a very, very positive rating. And it worried that it's a little excessive at its 2.5-hour runtime. Its box office, also something that seemed to be a little bit mixed amongst people. The movie opened slightly over projections. It was projected to gross around 110. It came in at about 118.5 in its 3-day opening weekend. To date, it has grossed 168 million domestically. It's grossed just over 400 worldwide. The opening, of course, was better than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. It's also held better than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I believe it's already nearly outgrossed Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania worldwide.
I think tomorrow or Monday, when the weekend numbers come out, it's going to pass Ant-Man.
It'll have hit it, yeah. So
it'll be, I think, at 500.
So it didn't open as high as I think people may have wanted for a Guardians film, but despite the fact projections were low anyways, but it is still doing very, very well, all things considered, at the box office. In terms of where this leads, the film does set paths for the future, but we know that a number of members involved are not returning. Most importantly, James Gunn has said that he is not, obviously because he's taken over DC, he is not continuing forth with the MCU. He has, for all intents and purposes, given his blessing for the characters to continue on with another creative. In fact, he's encouraged it. However, he has said that in terms of, are we going to get Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4 in the way that people want? No, that is not going to happen. Other actors in the film have also said they are done, specifically Zoe Saldana as Gamora and Dave Bautista as Drax have both said that they are finished. However, the likes of Chris Pratt and Karen Gillan have both said they're very much open to continuing their characters. So let's go ahead and jump into this. And obviously, last week Matt and I sort of gave our thoughts briefly. So, Jake, I'm going to start with you. Starting with just a brief summation. What were your thoughts on the film before we sort of dive into it a little more?
Big love for this film. This is one of the ones that is why I love the MCU as a whole. It's top 10 for me. Very minor gripes. Beyond that, all good.
All right. Now, last week, Matt, I know we were both positive on it. So I'll start with, because I said on the show last week, I was probably the most negative out of the four of us on it. Not that I didn't like the film. I certainly really, really enjoyed it. In terms of a scale rating, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10, which is not like, I mean, it's like probably barely top 15 MCU for me, but it's still a very, very good film, all things considered. I liked it just slightly less than the first one. I do think it's an improvement again over the second one. But I had one big sort of hanging issue with this film. And we'll start here because of all of us last week. It was one of those things where if you go back and watch the clip, I said that I wouldn't say it because we weren't discussing spoilers.
Let me add real quick, if it's okay with you. I want to put spoiler. I want to add spoiler. That way, if people come in.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say,
later,
we are moving into spoilers at this point, obviously. But yeah, go ahead. Add a banner in or add something in.
Yeah, I'll add a.
I was going to say it's in the title, but.
Well, yeah, but you never know.
So we'll jump into the spoilers. So last week, if you go back and watch the clip from our summer movie preview episode, when talking briefly about Guardians, I said I had one major issue with the character, or with a character in this movie. And it was the type of thing where when I said it, everyone sort of looked confused as to like what I could be talking about. And then I typed in the private chat, and you can sort of see all of their faces go, yeah, okay. My big withholding issue with this film is Gamora. I think from the jump, I said from the jump it was a bad idea to keep her alive in Endgame. I thought the fact that they set up the third Guardians film as like the search for Gamora was a weird idea. Like all of it just struck me as very, very weird. I think it would have been much cleaner to just write her out after Endgame, because I feel like you got everything you could have gotten out of that scene with her and Pratt in that film. Like I thought they executed it very well. He's still in love with her and hung up on her and thinks he has her again. It's like, no, he doesn't. And that's pretty much it. Like that's all there kind of is to it. In this film, that's all that's still kind of there to it. Their scenes are just various different interactions of, I used to love you, but you're not you, but you don't remember that we loved each other. And her responses are varying responses of, yeah, but I'm not who you say that I am, and we don't love each other. And that's their whole dialogue throughout this film. It's just different variants of saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. In terms of Pratt's character, if you wanted to continue to have him move on from Gamora, be a part of the storyline, I think you could do that without having her around. In fact, I feel like all his biggest character moments come with her not being involved. And in terms of her character in the movie, she doesn't have any growth outside of maybe some kind of small acceptance that like, oh, he knows that I'm not who I used to be, and that's okay with me. Like, maybe we could have loved each other, but, like, not this time. You know what I mean? Like, she's so separated to the extent that in the wide shot at the end of the movie when all the Guardians are hugging each other, she's shown walking away. Like, there's no growth in her character that grows to accept any of these characters. She's still mentally disconnected from this group. And so I don't know, man. It was a weird, like, I don't think her sequences in the film, I don't think add anything. Like, you have the scene with her talking to Rocket's, like, you know, body. I don't think that adds anything to it. To me, maybe this is just me. I felt Zoe Saldana kind of felt checked out a little bit. Like, she felt a little less invested in this than she did the other films. Almost like she knew this was her last performance. And if you check her social media, you definitely knew that she knew this was her last performance, because half of it was just like posts of Gamora in the makeup chair. And it was like she was clearly having more fun just being there than she was really caring as an actress about the character. I don't know, everything about it just felt unnecessary to me. I feel like even if you say that she's alive after Endgame, I think just the concept of Gamora could have come back to us. She didn't. She chose to go with the Ravagers, and that hurts him. And that's all you need, right? Like I feel like you get just as much out of him worrying that she's with Stallone's character when he shows up,
Mhm.
and like the fear of seeing her again, as you do him actually seeing her, because their interactions are so one note that there's not much growth. So I'll turn that over to you guys first. What do you guys think on that? Maybe it's just me that it
So,
stuck out like super negatively too, but that's my one gripe with
um,
the film is there's just this
Right.
sticking element of it in Gamora that's always there, but is adding nothing to the movie.
I will say I kind of agree with you and I kind of disagree with you. The not really having much of a connection, I do disagree. I think there's subtle moments that happen in the second half of the movie where you can see that she probably would have wanted to be a part of the group. Like there's some connection, like when Rocket, you know, when it looks like he's gonna die, you kind of see her reaction where she's kind of a little emotional seeing Peter, freaking out about that. But I think what ultimately, leads her not being a part of the group is the fact that she had a family, or at least in her view, she had a family for however many years it's been since Endgame, and that's with the Ravengers. I think if she wasn't a part of the Ravengers, if she was kind of on her own and they kind of crossed paths, I do think she would have joined the Guardians. But I will say, I do agree that she was phoning it in at times. Like, I don't think this was her strongest performance as Gamora, but there are little hints in there that make me go, yeah, she cares about these guys, but in her viewpoint, unlike with the previous Gamora, that's not her family. That's not her crew. Her crew is a completely different group. That's kind of how I viewed it. But I do agree to an extent with some of the things still with you. I'm kind of more in the middle on that. I think if there was more Guardians movies, I think maybe that it would have led to her going back with the Guardians, but that's not going to happen, at least with this group.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I guess my point of more of it is you already gave her, and this is an issue that I've had with the MCU in general, with like just
Mm,
reviving characters with no real regard for what they're gonna do with them. You already gave her an ending in Infinity War that I think works perfectly fine for the character, and I think that you
yeah.
gave the group enough emotional unresolved to go off of and build off of. If you
Hmm.
weren't actually going to work her, because like the whole point of this film, right? Like the entire marketing of this film is built around like one last ride with the Guardians. I mean, they literally have
Yeah.
two separate lines in the trailer about like from Quill and from Rocket that have been reworked a little bit from where they were used in the movie about riding off into the sunset one last time together. And it's like
Hmm.
this, but it just feels so empty to have who was previously your co-protagonist, who was given an emotional death, who was given a resolve to some extent, be ever present throughout the film, but
Hmm.
never actually be a part of it emotionally with the group, or honestly plot wise, because I mean for most of the action she's kind of either just there or she's not even there. You have to cut away back to her because she hasn't gone with the group. And that's what I mean
Right.
is I feel like overall she just kills the momentum of the film for me more than she adds to it. But I'm going to take back what I said. I don't think she's completely useless. I just think I'd rather cut her and save a few minutes than what does actually work with the character. I'll give that.
I could look, if they would have cut her out, I don't think it would have affected the movie in a negative way or a positive way. I think it would have been about the same, at least as far as I feel. I did like the storyline with Peter and her, because he was trying to win her back and being like, look, you're the same exact person. See, we used to be this, we used to be that, and she wasn't there, and it was almost like he was getting to that point of he had to accept it. And it with that storyline, with him accepting that she's no longer there, or his Gamora is no longer there with them, I felt like it was more impactful with her in the movie than it would have been without her in the movie. because maybe you would have had one scene with him sitting in a corner upset, and then another scene later on where he's like, okay, yeah, I accept it, it's fine, and maybe him and Nebula would have got together or something, or maybe that would have happened instead towards the end, where it's like, oh, I accept that my girlfriend's gone, I'm gonna date her sister now. You gotta add that whole thing in there too.
Sweet,
but no,
Alabama.
Yeah, but no, I think his storyline of as far as him accepting that she's no longer there, I think it worked better with Gamora in there because it felt more like he actually accepted it, where he went through the emotions more than he probably would have if she wasn't in the movie. Because, like I said, he would have gotten one, maybe two scenes of that being addressed. And it would have felt weird if she didn't come back after Endgame, too. It would have been like just addressing that part of it. It would have been a little weird, where it's like, oh, well, she's an Endgame,
well, I mean,
so why not throw her in?
I feel like enough time skip. Well, I feel like, for what it's worth, none of what they set up in Endgame is used, because Endgame sets up the as Guardians of the Galaxy, as they been called by the fans.
Yeah.
And they abandoned that because, I mean, James Gunn's literal quote is, "I had to thank Taika for taking the bullet for me. He had no interest in doing that." I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't want to bring Gamora back himself. And even then, they directly set up that the third film is going to be about them trying to find Gamora. And when this film picks up, they not only know where she is, like they actively know where she is, and Nebula's in communication with her to an extent. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like if we're already abandoning all the threads that were left, you just don't need to have her here. At least to me, that's
some that are carrying over. I mean, there's some storylines carrying over from Endgame, like Captain America. That's carrying over with.
No. I mean the Guardians. I mean specifically.
I get
Guardians
you.
element. Like
I get you now.
Gunn, especially now that the film's out, Gunn's been very open about the fact that though he had a lot of control over what happened with the Guardians in Infinity War and Endgame, the way the storyline resolved, he did not have control over, and he wasn't happy with the way they chose to resolve it. And I think that's why a lot of it was kind of abandoned, because he straight up said if Taika hadn't had his film come first, he would have just ignored Thor. He wouldn't have even talked about it and touched it. So it's like, which is fair, because I don't blame him. It's his sort of creative property. If he didn't want Thor there, nothing against Hemsworth, I get it. So I guess that's just my thought is like, if we're already abandoning the actual setup, I just don't know if she needed to be there. But Jake, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts?
I like it. I dig that they kind of subverted expectations with the idea of the search for Gamora, and then they kind of flipped that. And then I think the common expectation would be for Peter and Gamora to get back together eventually, and I like that they didn't do that. So I dig that they could have gone places that they didn't go.
That's fair.
I also I do agree that she wasn't like the driving force that she was previously. And her performances have been better previously. So there's that I agree with you on a little bit. But overall, I like Gamora here, and I think her story was necessary for the purposes of Peter moving on to whatever he will be moving on. Spoiler. It says it right there. I can say whatever I want.
No. He's moving on to story time with Grandpa. But so yeah.
On Gamora, thumbs up.
We'll move on and we'll talk about other stuff. That's fair though. I guess the most succinct way that I can say it is, and maybe it is the fact, because we've all acknowledged, and I think most people will acknowledge, her performance here is nowhere near as strong and engaged as her other appearances. And maybe that is part of what struck me as so off about it, is just the performance just wasn't there, when generally she's been one of the better actresses in these films. Like, she's been really good in the other movies. It just felt like, I don't know, I guess she had already moved on from Quill because there was no romance with Quill to begin with. And I don't know if she was totally needed for him to move on, especially because all of their dialogue scenes were just kind of repetitions of the same type of idea. And they already kind of had her and Nebula resolved. when they came into the film, like they sort of seemed to have already settled any differences they may have had from past Nebula and past Gamora already because they've been in communication. And so I guess that's more what it is. Like, if you're going to make her such a big part of the film, I just wish you would have had something to drive her involvement in the plot. Whereas, like, on paper, the story is Gamora helps the Guardians with this section of the film, and then they just don't have time to drop her off, so they have to take her to the next area. And it kind of feels like that's her involvement in the story, too. It's like she's useful for one section of the film, and honestly, I would have been fine if she was in that section of the film. I don't hate her in that section. It's just once we get past that, she's just such a passenger for the rest of the film and doesn't add anything past that scene. That, because you're right, like even the best parts of her and Quill come in that scene. Like I feel like if you had just had her in the one scene, you see that she's resolved her differences and you move on with it. I think that would have worked better. I just don't know why they kept her there. And for what it's worth, I should say this has nothing to do with like me wanting her to just go back to status quo, because I do agree with you. I very much respect James Gunn for taking what was out of his control and going with it in the more creative manner. I know fandom people are scared of the term subverting expectations. Rian Johnson has haunted that term for eternity. But I appreciate that Gunn did choose to do that with Gamora's arc. This movie wasn't about her becoming who she was before. This was about everybody else accepting that she is not the person she was. I don't know. I guess talking about it now, it's like, keep her in that one sequence. Keep her in that one sequence where she's effective to the plot and where most of the good dialogue happens, and then just actually drop her off back at the ship. Because it's not like we kept Stallone around past that one scene. We didn't also need to keep him in the movie. We could have gotten rid of her too. Like, they're, just, I don't know. That's my feeling on it, though. On paper, I respect what James Gunn was trying to do. I really do. I don't think she should have gone back to status quo. It just didn't work for me in delivery. So let's talk about more positive stuff, because I feel like I'm always the negative guy on this show. I want to talk about something more positive. So let's talk about the other members of the Guardians. Jake, I'll start down with you on this. Obviously, at the forefront of the film, we have Quill, Nebula, and Rocket. Rocket's backstory is more so than him himself. But there's a lot of different characters in this movie. What were some of the ones that stood out to you in terms of the Guardians?
Yeah, this is Rocket Raccoon's fucking film. It's tremendous. Bradley Cooper knocks it out of the fucking park. And I cannot say enough about how great Bradley Cooper was, how emotional Rocket's story was. So yeah, Rocket top tier in this one. I enjoyed Kraglin quite a bit here, actually. It's for a character who wasn't like much of anything the first go through, and then he grew in volume 2.
Like, just to cut in quickly, I should say Sean Gunn is like the underrated MVP of these films, and I hate the fact that people are now publicly shitting on James Gunn, because first off, and Matt, we've talked about this off camera before, it's Hollywood. Everybody works with the people they know and love, and everybody likes reusing the same actors. I mean,
it's about connections.
Chris Nolan literally just made a comment in an interview today about his career in Oppenheimer, and the exact quote is, "If I could just spend the rest of my career directing Cillian Murphy, I'd be content."
Yeah.
Like, who's been in most of his films anyways, to some extent.
It's like
you work with you work with who you like working with. Guy Ritchie's another one, right? Guy Ritchie spent like the last 4 or 5 years of his career just working with the same 3-4 people in leading roles, because he works with who he likes working with, right?
Yeah. And what they say is true about Hollywood. Like, Hollywood is about connections. It's about who you know.
It's not what you know.
That's a big part of Hollywood. Breaking news, guys. People work with people that they like. Like, Martin Scorsese is going to work with people he loves. Kirk Cousins, the Minnesota Vikings love working with him, apparently. So that's why he gets paid big bucks that he shouldn't be paid. But it's like, Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro,
Do you
Leo,
think he has the pass?
They work together. Kirk Cousins?
Yeah. Like the pass. Do you think he has it?
at first I was like, oh yeah, but Kirk Cousins.
If he
I
had
probably
it, he
shouldn't say
lost it
this.
with you like that.
Kirk Cousins is religious, which is all fine. Chris Pratt's religious. There's a lot of famous people that are religious. It's all good, right?
I was gonna
When
say
he
that
was
makes sense
asked
coming from Minnesota.
back, when was this? It was when he was on Washington, and there was a player that was drafted by the Rams who was gay, and he was asked, hey, would you be okay if your team drafted a gay player? They're asking every quarterback that question. Kirk Cousins, like, I wouldn't hate him, but I would try to guide him to Jesus. And it's like, okay, Kirk Cousins, I don't think you have the pass. But it's like, hey, it is what it is. But no, Kirk Cousins doesn't have the pass.
No. Okay.
What
All right,
did you ask
ask.
prior to
I
that
had
though?
to ask.
Because I saw Monty Williams got fired from the Suns, and I've been talking to people about that while we were talking about Guardians. It's a lot. Characters, right? Just
Shout out
like.
Cosmo. She's a good dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cosmo. I really like Cosmo.
Yeah.
In the
So
movie.
what I was saying was, so anyways, like the nepotism thing with James Gunn, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. That's
Sean Gunn has been the underrated member of this trilogy because, not only has, like, weirdly enough, Kraglin gotten an increased role each time, but he's continued to be one of the funniest things in these films. I totally agree with you, Jake. But also, people may forget he's the physical onset actor for Rocket Raccoon. And not just in these films, he's also in Infinity War and Endgame. In fact, that's why Kraglin's not in those films, because the Russos didn't want to take the time to have to shoot scenes twice with him as Rocket and him as Kraglin. But he's the physical actor. He's just as much a part of this as Bradley Cooper is. And in fact, I read that he also was the voice of not like baby Rocket, but like little kid Rocket in some of those flashbacks, because Cooper couldn't get his voice that high. So Sean Gunn did the voice of the character.
Oh shit! I did not know that actually.
So it's like he's just as much a part of this as I think Cooper. Obviously, Cooper delivers the emotion of the performance and the voice and all that, absolutely. But the physicality of it all, that is Sean Gunn 100%. And I think people need to put more respect on him. Because he's going to be in your future Superman movie, whether you like it or fucking not. So learn to love him.
He'll be in it.
And he's incredible. I mean,
he's crypto.
My sister has a habit of using Netflix to watch old shows, and she decided, God bless her soul, to watch Gilmore Girls. And at one point in one of the middle seasons, she like pauses it and calls my name out, and I'm like, "What?" And she just goes, "Is that the guy from the Guardians movies?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is."
Yeah. He's like the weird guy in the show.
He was on Gilmore Girls.
Yep, he was. There's a lot of people in Gilmore Girls. Seth MacFarlane's in it.
Melissa McCarthy, of course.
Yeah, I don't think he's in a lot of it, but yeah, Sean Gunn is really good, and look.
But yeah, sorry, I cut you off, Jake. If you had any more.
Oh yeah, you're good. Nebula here. There's I'll throw it out now so I don't forget to do it. Sure. The line of the movie for me that sticks out, that hit me like a ton of bricks when she said it in the film, and it just has stuck with me the past week. That's way worse than what Thanos did to me. For her whole character arc is Thanos tortured me, and I'm fucking pissed about it. That's been her whole thing for 2 movies. She watches a GIF. She watches 2 seconds of video of the High Evolutionary torturing Rocket, and she's like, that's way worse. For her to say that is just like, that hits so hard.
That's character development right there. Yeah, absolutely. Matt, I'll go to you. What stands out about the Guardians? Which one stood out to you?
So I agree. I think Sean Gunn, really good, and he's not just like really good as playing the body of Rocket, but he's really good as Kraglin too. I mean, watch like Guardians 2, like the end of the movie when the Ravengers come in, and it's like he shows he can pull off the emotional moments, and he has some of the funnier stuff in it, like in the beginning when he's trying to use the arrow to get Adam Warlock, and it just kind of bounces off of him, and he's like, who threw that? But yeah, I liked him in it. Nebula, I think Nebula is one of the better written characters, especially with this movie. I think her development has been really good. Obviously, Bradley Cooper, it's his movie. He's great in this movie as well. and I'm excited to see who he plays in DC because it feels like he's going to work with James Gunn in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dave Bautista's good as well. But I will say Chris Pratt, I think, gives his best performance as Star-Lord in this movie. I think he shows people that think of him as just like Star-Lord or, Emmett from the Lego movies or, the dude from Jurassic World that, no, he's actually a very talented actor.
Some
Watch
respect on
Moneyball.
Owen's name.
Moneyball, he gives a really good performance in, but he shows that, he has the capabilities of doing a really good job. Has some really good emotional moments in this film, like when it looks like Rocket's gonna die, because he
he's excellent.
technically was dead, but he gives a great performance there. And then also Karen Gillan, when she hears Rocket's alive, just there's that one little moment there. It's great. Mantis is really good. Overall, all the Guardians in this movie, I was happy with. I thought they all did a good job. Gamora, I don't know if you would count. I wouldn't count her as a member of the Guardians because she's not a member in this movie.
She's there though.
But I mean, she's there, but she's not like a Guardian in this film. At least that Gamora isn't. But the actual Guardians, I think they all are really good. Cosmo, I love Cosmo as well in this movie. I love that Cosmo could not get over the fact that she was called a bad dog, she could not get over it.
I love when a running gag works.
And Adam Warlock, we can't forget about him. I know some people were upset about Adam Warlock.
Well, I was going to throw him in the antagonist part, but
spoilers, he's part of the Guardians now. But I'll just throw my opinion out there now with him.
Go ahead, yeah.
No, I love him in this movie. I know some people had issues with him kind of being stupid, but he's literally a toddler. Basically, he's a toddler in an adult's body. I loved him. He has some of the funniest moments.
The way that I explained it, because my sister was one of those where she was just like, I think it's more so she just doesn't know much about the characters, so she was really confused about the direction, especially based on the marketing, because the marketing portrayed him as like this badass, and then he's played like this in the film. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, okay, imagine this, especially because there's a line where they reference the fact that the High Evolutionary ripped him from his cocoon earlier than he should have been born, right? I was like, Adam Warlock is Vision if he didn't have the intelligence of an AI implanted into him.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? Because Vision is sort of babyish and naive in Age of Ultron when he's first born, but he's got a fucking supercomputer in his head, so he's also really, really smart really, really quickly. Adam Warlock is that if he had to learn it all.
Yeah, and there's the moment in the movie where they have one of the Ravengers held hostage, and they're like... So good. They're like, show him we mean business, and he disintegrates them. He's like, how else are we supposed to show him we mean business? And then he just falls in love with his new pet, the Blurb. And then Gamora's like, move one more time, and I'll kill this thing. And he just goes, don't be rash. And now that's become the meme. Don't be rash. I love Adam Warlock though. I think honestly he's my favorite part of the movie, even over Rocket. I loved him in this movie.
Yeah, he's Jake. You want to talk about him quickly then?
Yeah, I'll throw out quick. I didn't like the way the build up, and like conversely to the way the subversion of expectation. In this one, I kind of would have liked Adam Warlock to be more the comic accurate Thanos killing badass. But that said, I laughed at the humor that we did get. So,
and I imagine with a character like as big in comic history as Adam Warlock, even if like for whatever reason, and I would imagine to some extent you're going to see those Guardians characters again. Like I think there's a reason they picked specifically who was going to be on that team. I'd imagine those characters would come back.
Yeah.
But even if they don't, I would imagine he'll be back in the future.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he'll be back.
So I think you'll get a chance to see that character in the future.
Probably. So yeah, like I said, that's my minor gripe.
With the exception of Taika, who's not directing for the MCU anymore, purportedly. I don't know anyone else who would go that type of humor with the character. You know what I mean? I feel like at this point you're going to get a little more of a mature take on it going forward. Especially with like if he's in like Kang Dynasty, which is Destin Cretton, or Secret Wars Ryan Coogler. Like, they're not going to take the same take with that character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like I said, my immediate thought was like, it wasn't what I was expecting, but I fell on board with it very quickly because, again, the way that I kind of look at it is like, okay, Adam Warlock in the MCU at least was sort of pitched like a Vision character. I mean, quite literally designed and built in a cocoon, metallic, superpowered character, you know, built for existence and power, not like born naturally. You know what I mean? So like, there's a lot of comparisons, and so my immediate thought was like, oh, right, he's just Vision if he wasn't immediately smart. So yeah, there's naivete and stupidness to an extent, and he is sort of learning social norms and like calling for what it's worth. Most useless character of the film was having Elizabeth Debicki come back as that Aisha character. Outside of the comedic value, she added nothing to this. But every time he called that angry, deranged woman mommy, it was the funniest thing. Or mother, or whatever. The different. It was
Yeah, mother.
Just because it's like the least motherly thing in the earth, but you're like, yeah, okay, fair enough. That's what he has. So I thought he was great, and like in my head, I was like, oh yeah, Will Poulter is good casting for this character because like I've always argued one of the most underrated, like probably the most underrated like YA series is the Maze Runner films. And if you watch, he's in 2 of those 3 movies, and if you watch him in those films, he's a lot more stoic and intense, and in one of them he's sort of an antagonist, and it's like, oh yeah, I can totally see how that translates. And then the first time you see him on screen after the action sequence and you get a bit of the dialogue from him, I immediately went, oh, we're the Millers Will Poulter. Oh, okay, that also makes a fucking lot of sense. So no matter how you slice it, this guy makes a lot of sense for this role. And I hope for your sake, Jake, because obviously I know you know a little bit more about the comics than I think Matt and I do. I hope whoever handles him next delivers on that version of the character, because I certainly think there's the potential for it. In terms of the others, yeah, again, you could go for ages about how great Rocket is in this film. His backstory is the crux of this movie. It's so well written, directed, it's well performed by everyone involved. Obviously, there was a ton of cameos in this movie, one of them being Linda Cardellini in her second MCU role playing his like pseudo. I couldn't tell if they were trying to go with love interest or motherly character. There was writing a very weird line for me with that character that she was playing.
There's a degree. Right. I mean, she had more of like the jail leader kind of quality, like which is matronly in some aspects. I agree.
Yeah.
Like the fresh, like Red in fucking Shawshank or some shit, kind of.
Right.
In a way. So it's that level of greatness. That Linda Cardellini is on as Lila.
Oedipus would be proud of the way they portrayed this character.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but no, overall, I thought all that really worked. I agree with you, Matt. I think this is Pratt's best performance so far as the character. Despite my misgivings about the Gamora half of his story, I think he genuinely does a great job with this. I think he handles all the dramatic elements perfectly. I think he handles the comedic elements of it still perfectly. I mean, like even in the opening when he spends the first few minutes of this film just like acting drunk, like I think it all really, really works. I do have to say, which we'll touch on, I'm sure, in a bit. It's one of the points I had, but I just thought of it because I talked about the opening. I don't think the soundtrack in this overall is as strong as the other films, but there are 2 specific needle drops that I think are some of the best in the trilogy. And one of them is, what a way to set the tone on this movie than to open with fucking Creep. Like, that's a hell of a way to set the tone for this movie, is to open with this. Like, especially compared to Mr. Blue Sky, and then before that, Come and Get Your Love. Like, yeah, what a way to set the tone of this movie. But yeah, so I think Pratt's excellent. Again, Karen Gillan continues to give one of the best performances in the MCU overall. I think she's been excellent in each and every film that she's been in. She's gone from being easily the best of a mediocre set of villains in that first Guardians film, because she was far and away the best of those 3, to being one of the best protagonists in this franchise, which is a hell of a turn. And I do think that a lot of those like side Guardians, like Mantis, like Drax, who I think were sort of a little off kilter and maybe a little too far gone in the second film. They were some of the weaker elements. I think they really play their part in this film.
I'll hop in quick. Sorry, I just want to piggyback on the soundtrack thing quick. William Bibiani wrote a great article about how the soundtrack isn't quite as good and it means less because the Zune doesn't mean anything to Peter Quill. It's someone else's old antique, whereas the Awesome Mix Volume 1 and 2 were curated. A really great article by Bibbs, so I thought I'd throw that out there.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't know that existed. But yeah, you're right. So I think obviously in terms of the Guardians, like, I think on a whole, when we're looking at the team, this is maybe the best. Like, this is the best that each and every one of them have been. I think when you look at the other films, even in the Avengers films, you can pull out like very quickly like who the weakest of the bunch is in terms of character and portrayal. This time, I think across the board, whether they're getting the really dark emotional stuff or they are just serving as the comedic sort of backdrop for the film, they all work perfectly. Gunn did a great job in that sense with the characters. And yeah, honestly, what made me laugh more than anything that Cosmo said or did was just the thought of Maria Bakalova did mocap for that character. So that's her crawling around. That's her sitting in that chair. All of that is like her on fucking fours trying to act like a dog. And that is just the funniest thought in the world that they actually went through mile with that. Because apparently it's like if it wasn't her doing mocap, then it was just them sticking an actual dog in the scene for like reference. And that is hilarious to think of. Like, I think like specifically the one that I'm pretty sure is a real dog is like her trying to hold the ship together, where there's really not much motion going on with the character. There's not a lot of direction outside of getting a still shot of the dog you can use. So like things like that, I'm pretty sure it's a real dog, and then the rest of it's mocap for her moving, which is incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the soundtrack, yeah, I'll speak on it quickly. I think it's I don't think it quite stands out as much as the other films. You know, I there's a couple on it that stand out to me. Obviously, opening with Creep I thought was a great choice. Since You've Been Gone I think is a great song. I liked the like slowed down darker version they used in the trailers. I thought that was a good rendition of it. But the way that it's used in the movie with the spacesuit scene also works really, really well. And then the other one is for the second time in a month, the Chris Pratt movie drops No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Which is just a weird coincidence. Maybe not. Maybe he really likes No Sleep Till Brooklyn and he's just suggesting it everywhere. But
we know he raps Eminem.
We do know that he can rap. I would have loved to have seen Eminem show up in this. That'd have been funny as hell. But, no. So No Sleep Till Brooklyn. And I thought that action sequence is, in terms of like camera work, scope, visual effects, everything about it, that might be the most impressive action sequence in all three of these films. That was fucking like, if anyone's worried, especially like, because like obviously we know Superman's gonna have big action, and I will say this before I turn it over to you, Matt, to talk about the soundtrack. I'm gonna say this definitively. And I think the only people who will disagree with me are like the Snyder nuts who still haven't given up that like ounce of hope that they'll get their films back.
June 2nd, guys.
Is that the next?
They're gonna announce it.
Right?
Yeah, they're gonna boycott The Flash to show James Gunn that they mean business, even though James Gunn has nothing to do with The Flash.
Yep.
Flash
okay, that tracks.
Their creator.
Yeah,
If anything, giving it money would show support after Shazam failed.
I'm not mistaken.
Realize how to protest, right? Okay, never mind. That's a whole nother episode. That's just mind-boggling to me. Like, anyways, if anyone's worried about Gunn, because I know there's and this is fair, there was a lot of concern initially when it was announced that Gunn was writing and directing Superman, because most of what we've seen has been very comedically driven, even as DC films. Like Peacemaker doesn't, as brilliant as I think it is, does not scream Superman to me. This movie is the one that I think will convince you. If for some reason you're here 20 minutes into the spoiler discussion and haven't stopped watching, this movie is the one that will convince you if you haven't seen it yet, because I think it shows just how well he can handle the dramatic stuff. It shows how well he can handle action, even big bombastic action like this. I think it shows a new side to his direction that he does really, really well here. So Matt, over to you.
Yeah, I was actually looking up to see if he has a producer credit because he did with Wonder Woman and those movies. So I was like, oh, I wonder if Zack Snyder was also a
Oh,
producer.
Snyder?
Yeah,
Probably
it
not to
wouldn't
this point.
surprise me, but he might make a little bit of money because it's his character. Anyway, soundtrack. That's what we're talking about. I agree with you guys. Like, it's not the best soundtrack. It's probably my least favorite soundtrack. But I will say, yeah, I'm kind of tired of big blockbusters using "No Sleep Till Brooklyn" in their movies. You had or any Beastie Boys song in general, because I mean, you had Star Trek Beyond use a Beastie Boys song and stuff. And I'm like, okay,
Sabotage.
you like Sabotage. It's like, okay, guys,
they
It's
used
get
it too.
Like, yeah, we get it, guys. You don't have to use that every single time. You have
Come
to
on.
use them every time. There's
Give me-
other rock bands you can use.
Super Mario 2, give me Fight for Your Right to Party.
There you go. Yeah.
Beastie
But,
Boys don't even like that song.
Right.
Or, you know what? Let's take it one step further. Let's bring back the Eminem reference, and let's give me Berserk, the Eminem attempt at doing a Beastie Boys song.
Yeah. Give us that. But
By the way, to
but
answer
no,
your question, he's EP on The Flash, not a producer.
Okay.
So he'll
he's
still
an
get
executive
a paycheck.
producer. Yeah.
Yep.
So why are we boycotting something that's going to lose Zack Snyder
Also,
money?
Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, for what it's worth, but not Blue
There
Beetle.
we go. So
guys, not that I want Blue Beetle to fail, but if you're gonna continue to be persistently fucking annoying, save your boycott for August.
wait for Blue Beetle.
Get him that paycheck.
Yeah.
Help out Deborah. Like,
yeah, I mean, is he going to get a bunch of money? No, but he's still getting money. But regardless, they're going to do their thing. The Flash is going to make $700 to $1 billion, in my opinion. Even with this Ezra Miller stuff, it's going to make a ton of money, so their boycott will fail. But soundtrack for Guardians, again, not as good as the other movies, but I did think, even though I'm kind of tired of hearing Beastie Boys in big movies, I thought No Sleep Till Brooklyn was used very well in this movie. I thought out of the Beastie Boys movies was one of the better Beastie Boys songs used in movies was one of the better ones used, in my opinion. And I thought, trying to find it because I got the soundtrack on my screen. I believe it's Dog Days Are Over is the final song. It's that big song when they're all dancing at the end stuff. Yeah. I thought that was a good choice too.
Felt weird at first, but I liked it when it played.
I thought it fit real well.
I had the same, honestly, I had the same feeling in both the first two Guardians films. Maybe it's more just like the idea of trying to time the resolution to something feels weird and then you settle into it, because I was sort of like, really, ain't no mountain high enough. Okay. And then obviously, was it Father and Son at the end of the second film? Same thing. It's like, this is my initial thought was like, this is a bit of a different vibe than everything else. And then it's like, yeah, okay, no, it works.
But I liked it overall. That song being used at the end. I mean, there's some bangers on this, like Crazy on You is a good song and stuff. But it doesn't have that same pop. And I will say, hearing Come and Get Your Love after the first post-credit scene, that was kind of a nice little send-off for this trilogy. I thought that was a good choice to end it with that. It was the end and also the potential beginning of this new team. Potential. We'll see what happens, but I mean, it's a good soundtrack. It's just not on the level of Guardians movies.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a good soundtrack for most other like MCU films. It's just not quite. It's a step down from the others. So then let's talk about the actual plot, because that also ties into the one real character we haven't gotten into yet, which is the High Evolutionary. So the trailers did a good job at keeping the plot of this movie concealed. Like they really, despite showing a lot, they didn't really give anything away, which I really appreciated about it. So the actual plot of this film is early on in the film, based off of the previous events of the second film and the High Priestess attempting to get revenge on the Guardians, Rocket is severely injured in an attack that is committed by Adam Warlock.
Yeah.
I was like, what's that guy's name? It's not Will Poulter. It's Adam Warlock.
Yes.
By Will Poulter. Adam Warlock. Fuck. Did it again. Sorry. He sounds like a superhero character. He sounds like Will Poulter. That's not a real person's name. Anyways. So Adam Warlock attacks and gravely injures Rocket. And the Guardians find they can't just simply heal him the way any of the rest could, because of something to do with his genetic coding when he was genetically modified. And so from there, the movie sort of becomes this MacGuffin chase to an extent of, we have a limited amount of time to get the information we need to sort of unlock Rocket and actually heal him and save him. And simultaneously, it dives into the background of Rocket, finally exploring what was sort of introduced vaguely all the way back in the first film, about the fact that he is a genetically modified creature and what did sort of happen to him that fucked him up to a great extent. And the movie sort of just bounces back and forth between the two. I've compared it in a positive light to Eternals, where Eternals sort of had that same flow where it was bouncing back and forth between the origins of the Eternals and the modern day story that they're following. And this movie does something similar, where it's bouncing back and forth between Rocket's origins with the High Evolutionary and the Guardians' search to find what they need to help save Rocket. Which of course then also brings us to Chikuri Iwuji as the High Evolutionary, and I am like 90% certain at this point that I know how to say that guy's name, so thank you. Apparently he also goes by Chuck, which is helpful in case you don't know how to say his name. Everyone in interviews has just addressed him as Chuck, Chuck. So if you don't know how to say his name, Chuck Iwuji also works. But who, of course, I was super excited about from the moment he was cast in this film, because I thought he was the standout in Peacemaker. He was excellent in that show, and I think he brings it 100% here again. But I'll turn it over to you, Jake, first. What were your thoughts on the plot of the film and then how that ties into the villain?
I really dug the plot, man. This villain is terrifying. He's such a douchebag. I really hate the shit out of this guy, so he's doing his job as a villain. I thought his performance was excellent. The heartbreak of Rocket's story was just, again, terrible. And I'm not even a big animal dude, like, as far as that aspect of it goes, but it still got me.
Right.
So for it to get me that way was big.
I was going to say, again, if you're here over 30 minutes into the Guardian spoiler discussion and you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I should say that actually we're well over 30 minutes. We're probably at close to an hour now.
Yeah.
But
I
if
think we're actually 40 minutes
and you haven't seen the film yet, while obviously there's a lot of discussion in this film and very clear evidence shown of what could be akin to animal abuse, I do think the warning articles have overblown it a little bit. They're not literally full on showing you the torture of animals. They're just showing you the after effects.
It's heavily implied.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you very fucking well know.
I mean, there's the scenes where
it's the difference between like showing the otter with the robotic hands and then seeing its arms get chopped off.
Arms getting chopped off, put on robotic arms. I mean, the furthest we go with seeing anything like that is the animals that are in like the tube tanks or whatever, and they put the stuff in, and you see them mutate into giant creatures.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Like the giant turtle that wanted to kill everybody.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, Bebop and Rocksteady did that same thing in that movie. Yeah. So you're good.
Yeah, but that's as far as it goes as far as showing you that stuff. It does a good job explaining what happens and
for sure.
Making it kind of tough to hear, but it doesn't actually show you. You don't see Rocket getting all this
mutilated
stuff happen to him. Yeah,
it's an excellent exception to the rule of showdown.
I thought about that. Again, I thought about that for the people watching who haven't seen the film 54 minutes in. back down to
Yeah.
you, Jake. Continuing your thoughts, please.
Yeah, and the fucking those animals are cute as shit, man. Fucking
Oh, yeah.
like I really do dig those supporting characters for what they are.
I'm buying a
Like-
baby raccoon.
Oh boy.
God damn it! Is this the next Baby Yoda?
Oh my
One of
god,
them-
yeah.
Yeah, except
Well,
you can't buy
yeah.
a baby Yoda.
Yeah, we had baby Groot.
Don't
Baby
buy a
Yoda,
baby raccoon,
baby
just go
Rocket.
catch one.
We just need one more so we can have the 4 horsemen of just cute Disney characters.
Kiwi the Turtle, Shining Force 2, coming
There you go.
soon.
I guess Floor. There you go. Floor would be probably
Floor
the other.
is-
It's a
yeah.
weird, but it's like, oh, I wanna hold you, even though you're probably gonna die.
Teefs
But I
reminds
still
me
wanna
of
hold you.
Malcolm, dude. That's what I got
Teefs-
from that.
When I heard Teefs talk, I kept thinking, did they get one of the people that did the "Don't touch me, I'm scared" things to do the voice? Like, did they get one of those guys to do? Because it sounds just like, I think it's the red character, like the big red character in "Don't Touch Me, I'm Scared." That sounds exactly like Teefs. I think I gotta look that up. I think they might have. It sounds too similar.
Don't even know how to react to that.
Have you not seen "Don't Touch Me, I'm Scared"?
Honestly, no. I have no idea what
Oh,
you're referencing.
they're on YouTube. They're like little 3-minute shorts. Pretty horrifying at the time when they came out. It's like pretty messed up. But yeah, Don't Touch Me, I'm Scared. It was like huge on YouTube back in 2013, 2014. Did like 6 of them. And it's all like, oh yeah, this is a happy thing, and then you start like seeing all this like disturbing content pop up. But I swear, one of those guys was Teefs.
Teefs.
It sounds exactly like it.
Well, it's not. So
I swear to God, I'm gonna go on IMDb because it is on IMDb. It's Red Guy. Is Red Guy?
the actor's name is Asim Chowdhury.
Okay, so it's not, but it sounds just like it.
It wasn't Malcolm either? Okay, weird.
It was not Malcolm either. No.
Love you, buddy.
It wasn't
It's
Malcolm.
For what it's worth, though, this guy was British, so he's not
Mhm.
from Malcolm's side of the world, but he's not from our side either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like from that side. He's from the right side. That's how the world actually is, right? With America on the left, that's how it goes.
I don't know if I'd call the UK and New Zealand the same side of the world.
They're right and the left. I mean, like, yeah, it's on the. I mean, like he's on the bottom right as opposed to the top right, sure, but I'm good at geography.
I know the capitals of the states. Anyways, but yeah, Matt, we'll go to you. What were your thoughts on the plot of the film?
I like the plot. I thought it was a good plot. Makes sense that it went to focus more on Rocket, because that's kind of what they hinted at doing this whole time. James Gunn has said in multiple interviews before this movie came out that he kind of views himself as like Rocket, and that's kind of how the character out of all those movies that he's kind of based himself on is Rocket, where he put some of him in that. But thought the plot was good overall. I think James Gunn, not James Dunn. I mean, to Marvel,
Different guy.
that may be true, but for James Gunn, what I will say, and I like that he's done this, is for each of these Guardians movies, he's like kept building up the stakes, and you could just with each one, he's done a really good job of making you feel like it's not like, oh, they've gone through this before, they'll be fine. Like, it makes you go, oh, they haven't faced anything like this, especially this movie, where it's like, oh, I could easily see some of them dying.
Right.
But having a high evolutionary in there, being the one that made Rocket, made, Lila, Teefs, and all them Floor the way they were, and just being this irredeemable character. Like, because with Thanos, there's a little bit inside there where you're like, okay, I can see what he's doing. Like he's trying to do this for the betterment of the universe.
You
So I
smoke some
can
weed with
see
him, everything will be okay.
yeah, it's like I disagree with how he's approaching it, but I get that I don't see him as like a completely irredeemable character that there's nothing good about him. With the High Evolutionary, he's completely irredeemable. Like his whole thing is like, I'm gonna try to make everybody perfect, but in order to do that, I'm gonna take people, not kill them, but I'm gonna take people or creatures or whatever, and I'm gonna just mess with them, and I'm gonna like do horrifying things to these people and creatures, and I'm gonna keep doing it until I find something I feel is perfect. So I think he's done a really good job. High Evolutionary, I think, is one of the best villains that the MCU has ever had. The only couple I can think of is like Loki, Thanos, and Killmonger,
Right.
and
I was gonna say the
Kate
MCU. The MCU is one of those
That's
places where like there's genuinely really only 5 villains. Like most of the villains are serviceable enough for the movie.
Yeah. They work
but
for
there's
the movie.
very few like genuine upper echelon villains. I think he goes in there. I think because I remember like it was announced like either right before Peacekeeper aired or like right at the start of it airing that he had joined the cast of Guardians 3. And I remember sort of watching the show with sort of that in mind, thinking like, okay, I've never heard of this guy. I know he was in 1 or 2 other shows, but I'm kind of curious as to see like what comes of this. And he's excellent in Peacemaker. He's truly, I mean, he is scene stealing, quite frankly. He's excellent in that show. And this is, I'm not going to get into too specific because I know there's a lot of people who haven't seen that show. And if you haven't, you should check it out.
Yes.
He's one of the protagonists of the show, but his character has a darker angle than the rest, and there's moments of the show where other characters don't know genuinely whether or not to trust this character, even though his intentions all show good. And in those moments, the way that they frame him and the way that he sort of acts, you can see like, oh, this guy can go to that dark place if he needs to. And this movie, he 100% does, and he's excellent in it. I think in terms of, because you're right, I think most of the best villains, because like for me, the ones that I would put up there, Thanos would be up there. I would put, I think both Spider-Man villains, Gyllenhaal and Keaton, I think are both pretty good. I'd put them in there.
Yeah. I mean, you got to include Willem Dafoe at this point because he was the
villain.
Sure,
Dafoe I'd put in there, yeah. Like all 3 of those villains I think were genuinely excellent. I'd put Killmonger in there. But the thing is, the best thing about the MCU is every great villain in the MCU has an air of relatableness, relatableness to them. I think of all the great villains they've done, maybe the least relatable is Hela.
Yeah.
And I'd argue that there's still a sense of like forgotten sibling thing that you can sort of understand like why she went down the path that she did. Because it was sort of like daddy doesn't love me type of thing with it, all based on prophecy and what was to come and that type of element to the character. This is the first, I think the MCU is finally truly nailed just an unrelatable, unhumanizing, just terrible character with an excellent performance, an excellent backstory, and there's nothing about him that makes you want to relate to him. He's just someone to fucking hate on the truest of levels. And I think that they finally nailed it. This isn't an instance where maybe the script does a better job, but the performance isn't quite there. Or like I think Ant-Man's a great example of Corey Stoll is giving it his fucking all, but that script's not there for that character to really run with. Like he's trying, but the script doesn't give him much. Both are on fire here. Gunn writes an incredible character for you to hate, and Chikuri Iwuji is delivering that performance. And I think it makes it one of the best performances we've seen in the MCU for a villain. In terms of the plot itself, I think they made the right choice by masking it. I like that they did sort of hide what it was about. I like that they kick into it right away. Like I was really, really shocked that because I remember obviously it's one of like the seminal scenes in that trailer of like Rocket on that table, and the trailer almost makes you think it's like a third act moment. But like that's most of the movie. That's where he spends most of the movie is on that table. And it's like, that's awesome. I like that they just kick into it right away. This is the plot of the film. Rocket's dying. Let's go. It creates a sense of urgency. And I think it's truly a testament that Gunn has created, and this is like really the ultimate thing I could say. Like, despite my misgivings about the film with Gamora and the ups and downs of the different films, because I don't think any of them are perfect, I think it's a testament to Gunn as a writer, as a director, and as a creative, that he has created a series of characters so endearing, so personal, so well performed through his direction, through their performance, that your personal investment in these characters runs so deep that we witness mass genocide of a whole planet. Like, this planet gets glassed Halo style, and it's an afterthought. Like, it is a total afterthought that there's mass genocide in this film because you are more concerned about getting back to the characters that are stuck on that ship. And I think that that is a masterstroke by Gunn as a writer and as a director, that he can make you care so much about these characters that you don't even really care about what else is happening in the universe. You know, I mean, and think about all those cute little animal creatures. They're dead. That cute family with the mom who was excited to help, and the dad who was like, oh, fucking hell, and the kid who's like hiding it, gone, blown to smithereens. They don't exist anymore, and you don't care.
Oh, they're on style.
Because you're so invested in the characters that he's created. And I think that is the ultimate, as somebody who seems to like hold himself up as a writer as much as he does a director, I think that's the ultimate compliment you could give someone like James Gunn, is the fact that you have created a world so engrossing. We don't care about mass genocide. We care about the characters. So yeah, any last thoughts or brief things? I mean, we could talk about, of course, the future. So from here, it's looking like the new Guardians team that we get with the post-credit scene, which is Rocket, Kraglin, Groot, Adam Warlock, Cosmo, and the little girl, which in the movie, I think they call her like Phyla or Phyla. I forget how they pronounce it. Which Gunn has said directly is a reference to the comic character Quasar, that is basically a child version of the character Quasar, Phyla Vel. That is the Guardians team seemingly going forward. Oh, and that little furry creature that Warlock has. That is the Guardians team going forward. The movie also ends with Peter Quill finally going back to Earth to visit his grandpa. For all of you, I know Austin is a purveyor of the shitty Christian films. For all of you fans of the Christian Bible-thumping movie War Room, Black Grandma, that's married Quill's dad, that's the same actress in this movie. I recognized her immediately and went, the fuck is she doing here? But this better be a totally different movie if we're going into our war closet. So Quill goes home to spend quality time with Grandpa. Grandpa looks like he's on the fucking edge because she's got a grown son living with them who doesn't do anything, which I want to see that sitcom. If we're making MCU television shows, can I get that television show, please?
You want to come over sometime?
Fucking hell. That was good. And so, and it says at the end, the legendary Star-Lord will return.
Yeah.
I guess we'll close out with, if you guys have any final thoughts on the movie, and then where do you think these characters are going to show back up again? Because the rest of them, it's basically been like, Karen Gillan has said she wants to come back as Nebula, but aside from that, Drax is pretty much written off. Palm Clementif's Mantis is pretty much written off into the future. Gamora said she's not coming back, so that character's written off with the Ravagers. That'll be said and done there. So about half of them are done. About half of them have room to come back. For myself, overall, like, final thoughts. Again, the movie's excellent. Go see it if you're over an hour into the spoilers discussion and haven't seen it yet for some reason. Go check it out. It's truly excellent. It's worth your time. Like I said, I have the one big misgiving about Gamora, but it's something that hasn't affected most people. That's just me and the way that it hit me. So clearly it's not a universal issue. Go check it out. In terms of the future, I don't know where the Guardians team comes back into play unless you like throw them in, because according to like rumors about Kang Dynasty, the way that film is sort of structured is, or what they're looking at is, it'll be focused on a core group of characters that are dealing with the initial like problem at its core of Kang. And throughout the film, there will be sort of quick cutaways to other heroes in the MCU fighting their own variant of Kang as he's slowly invading the universe. And so I'd imagine you could work them in that way, like as a cutaway within that film, because I'm sure they would somehow get wrapped into fighting Kang on another planet, so to speak. I don't know where you'd 100% fit them back into the plot, though. In terms of Quill, I think it is Kang Dynasty. I could totally see him being a protagonist or one of the protagonists in that film. As I said, I've read things about purportedly what the screenplay looks like for that film that I'm not going to say here because if it turns out to be true, I don't want to spoil it for anybody if what I've read is credible. But I could totally see him working his way into that film as a lead character, especially because he's already on Earth, especially because he does have those connections to the Avengers now. I could totally see him being somebody, and he seems like the type of character that, like, if something's going down, he'd put himself on the front lines and say, "All right, let's solve this issue." So I think that's how they'll rope it back in. I think it'll be on Earth Kang Dynasty. He'll get roped in somehow there. Matt, final thoughts, and then kind of the future.
Yeah, overall, really, really good movie. One, I would say a top 10 MCU movie, in my opinion, for sure. The stakes felt high. I think it has one of the better action sequences in any MCU movie. Really enjoyed it. As far as where I see these characters going, obviously, I think Star-Lord is back. I mean, they said he's coming back in the credits. I think he could pop up before Kang Dynasty, if I'm going to be completely honest. Because if I pull up the MCU timeline, I think a movie that he could maybe pop up in is maybe Thunderbolts. That's kind of the first one I think that he could potentially pop up in. I don't really see him popping up in Loki season 2 in like a credit scene. Maybe I don't see that happening. I mean, everybody's in Captain America: New World Order, so maybe he'll pop up in there. Maybe because everybody's in that movie. And then really, besides that, it's probably going to be Spider-Man or Kang Dynasty would be the ones I think that are possible. So Thunderbolts, Captain America, Spider-Man, Kang Dynasty, those are the 4 I could see him popping up in. I definitely believe he will be in Kang Dynasty. The other Guardians, all of them are going to be in Kang Dynasty, is my belief. Or if not all of them are going to be, I believe the new team of Guardians will be in Kang Dynasty. Rocket, Groot, all of them, they're going to be in Kang Dynasty, in my opinion, especially Adam Warlock. He's definitely going to be in Kang Dynasty. As far as Mantis and Drax,
well, I wholeheartedly believe that
Nebula
is done.
I think, they could say what they want. I think Secret Wars is where you're going to have Drax, Mantis, Gamora, Nebula. I could see popping up in Kang Dynasty. I think I could see her popping up in there, but she'll definitely be in Secret Wars. But my belief is every MCU character is going to be in Secret Wars, whether it's a different variant or it's the one that we've known in the MCU. I believe they're all going to be in it, plus others. So I think Peter could pop up before Kang Dynasty, but everybody else, I think it's either Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars is where they're going to pop up again. But I mean, if you're in Kang Dynasty, you're in Secret Wars.
I'd bet good money that you could take everyone, not Batista. That man's been way too vocal.
I think Dave Batista. Look, this movie's going to come out in probably at this point 2027, Secret Wars, because everything's being pushed because Bob Iger's coming in saying, "Hey, Kevin, I know Bob Chapek said, don't make everything release all at once. We don't need 3 phases in 2 years." I think there's going to be enough time. Batista will be good, and he'll pop up in Secret Wars. And I think that is going to be the final movie he would be in. I think they'll approach him, Kevin Feige, to be like, "Look, we understand there's things that you weren't happy with. We're not going to do those things again. Could you pop up one more time with everybody in Secret Wars, and I think he'd be like, yeah, sure, it's another paycheck. I think out of all these actors, he's going to be the one that will pursue different things, like dramatic stuff that's going to push him as an actor. But he will be in Secret Wars. I would put money down on that he will be.
All right, well, we'll talk about that in 10 years when it comes out. Jake,
Yeah.
down to you. Closing thoughts.
Yeah, once again, overwhelmingly love this movie. 9 out of 10, somewhere in the low mid 90s out of 100, I suppose. I have it at 9 out of 10, or 9 in the MCU rankings, just above Guardians 1. I think you said you had it the other way, just flip flopped. And I'm a big fan of Guardians 2, which I have at 13 now. So 9, 10, and 13 is where I have this trilogy, making it my favorite trilogy in the MCU by a pretty wide margin. It's the only one that does not have a miss to me in any capacity. So yeah, love the Guardians, love this movie. I think it, like right now, I have it sitting at the best of them. Obviously, it'll take rewatches and rankings will change as time goes by. But yeah, this is the one that finally bumped Iron Man out of the top 10 for me.
Fair enough. All right. So we'll go ahead and move on. I'm going to try something new here as we go ahead and close up the show. For those of you way back in the day who used to watch AMC Movie Talk, you'll remember there was a segment of the show called Buy or Sell, where basically you just ran through sort of news stories a little quicker. I'm going to do the same thing. Minimal words on this, but I'm just going to throw out some news stories and get some very short thoughts from you guys. That we had here. First one is Mel Gibson is attached to his first directorial feature since Hacksaw Ridge. The movie is called Flight Risk, which will see a pilot transporting a dangerous criminal for trial. If that sounds like the film Plane, because it's basically the same plot, but Mel Gibson directs and Mark Wahlberg will star in the Gerard Butler role. Matt, do you buy or sell the concept?
I buy it with Mel Gibson, but it just makes perfect sense that Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg would work together based on problematic things in the past. It just makes sense. Both have done racist things, but now they're loved in Hollywood again. I buy. Mel Gibson's a great director, so whenever he directs a movie, it's a banger.
Jake?
Sal, it is both Jewish American Heritage Month and Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Yeah,
so can't have those two doing things right now.
Well, fair enough. It's not coming out.
They could have waited a month.
Second one, amidst all the rumors of the film purportedly having issues, director Stephen Caple Jr. did an interview to build up Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. The most interesting proportion of the interview, however, was when he was asked by the interview in THR about Michael Bay's contribution to the film, as he is a producer on the movie. Caple Jr. said Bay stayed out of the creative process of the film. He felt no need to intrude himself and left it solely up to myself and the writers. However, he made himself completely open to me, which I used during the post-production process of the film, as I'd never worked on a film with this type of visual effects work, in which he was always willing to answer a phone call, even while shooting his own film, which was Ambulance, which came out last year. Bay was always willing to take a call with me and the visual effects producers and help us make the film work. Matt, do you think Bay's contributions to the VFX are welcome here, or should he have stayed away completely?
Yeah, I'll buy that. I think it's welcomed. He wasn't involved in the story, so that's a good thing. But say what you will about Michael Bay, visually does a really good job with this stuff. That's like the one thing you can give him, and that's about it. So I'd buy it if it's just visuals.
Jake?
I will buy a Bay explosion any day.
And the final one is in an interview that was sort of a surmises of the franchise, director Chad Stahelski was asked directly about John Wick Chapter 5 following Lionsgate's studio execs' recent comments about wanting to make a fifth film, despite the fact that the fourth film seemed like a conclusion to the series directly. Stahelski was very political in his answer, but when you read between the lines, what he's essentially saying is, while you can never say never, and myself and Keanu may be interested in the idea down the road to some extent, we basically just attempted to topple everything that we'd ever done with that film, and we feel we succeeded, so why feel the need to go back near it? but studios are going to do what studios are going to try and do. With that said, Jake, I'll go down to you. Buy or sell the idea of needing a John Wick Chapter 5 if spinoffs are coming already?
I'll sell on that one for now. Let the man rest a little bit and then bring him back in a couple of years, I think.
All right, and Matt?
I'm going to sell. I don't think we need 5. However, I'm not going to turn down Keanu Reeves in a John Wick movie.
Fair enough. Well, you'll get to see more of him at the very least in the Ballerina when it comes out later this year. With all that, or maybe I think it's next year now at this point. They pushed it. With that said, though, guys, that has been the show. Thank you guys for watching. Going forward, we may do more of the movie discussions. Not all of them will be as long and in-depth as Guardians of the Galaxy, but of course, with the WGA strike happening, there's going to be a little less going forward on films. And as we do come into the summer movie season, there is something to talk about every week, even if it's not the biggest of blockbusters. Obviously, in a couple of weeks, we will have Fast 10 out. Following that, there's a slew of films. Once again, Little Mermaid comes out. We're going to have Across the Spider-Verse. We're going to have Flash. We're going to have Transformers. Bumblebee. He's not the star of it this time around. So we'll have a bunch of films coming. So we may do a little more of the film discussion stuff going forth. The final thing that I want to throw in here is Movie Battleground will be coming back this Monday. I had said that last week. I had set the date for May 15th, and we are all on track to begin airing 3 matches a week for the summer duration of the season this Monday. The full schedule will go up Monday morning before the first match airs, but I'll announce here on the show that the first matchup is going to be a sort of rookie matchup between Jeremy Potters, who is currently 1-0 in the league, taking on a rookie, and not only a rookie, but the first female competitor that we've ever had in the league, Maria Hammond. So obviously a win for her would be huge as both a rookie and I guess as the only female representative, it'd be huge. But of course, Jeremy had a solid outing, so he'll be looking to pull that win. But like I said, be on the lookout for that match Monday and a schedule earlier on Monday as well. That said, Jake, of course, thank you for being here with us as always when you are here. Matt, be sure to check out all of his side endeavors, including Inside the Horseshoe and what's the name of that other channel?
Grab the Remote.
There we go. Where he does movie reviews. Where he does movie reviews and other news discussion connected to film as well. And of course, subscribe for more content every week here on this show, Movie Battleground. And I say more, but kind of. That's it, though. Thank you guys. See ya.